Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the VonDubCast. Episode 1 is with my sister, Courtney. We cover a wide range of topics from women's health, politics, growing up in a small town and moving to the city for university, and the growth that we saw during those kind of transitionary phases. And I just really enjoyed getting to sit down finally with my sister again. You know, we used to be able to talk all the time on different subjects here and there when we lived together, and then you go off in different ways in your lives, and it's really nice to bring it back to something like that and be able to turn our phones off for 3 hours and just get right down to business and go in depth on a lot of these topics. I really enjoy her outlook, and it's nice to be able to sit down with your sibling. It's kind of a lost art, this long form conversation. So I really hope you guys enjoy it as much as we enjoyed recording it. And unfortunately, there is a kind of a buzz that was going throughout the recording. I think it was the headphones I plugged into it. I'm going to try and edit it down so that it's not too loud in the headphones. And for the next one, I'll really try to make sure I know that that's not going to be impacted. I'll do a couple test recordings first. But you know what? That's what comes with trying to learn this new skill of podcasting. It's going to have a couple bumps in the road. So yeah, hopefully everyone can get by that and just really enjoys the content that we're putting out to you guys. And if not, well, it's free. So who cares? All right. Now what do I need? Intro song. How about this? Scooby-doo-boo, dip-a-doo-ba-doo-boo, Scooby-doo-boo-boo, intro music. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the VonDubCast. It's my new podcast that I'm starting. My guest today is my sister, Courtney. I'm hoping to get a little bit more guests outside of my family, but with everything going on right now, I think this is where I'm going to start and just see how I like to do this and kind of get to know learning this as a skill and just jumping right into it. I bought all the equipment so I couldn't chicken out and set it all up. I spent the whole morning trying and failing at this. Mics weren't turned on the first time, and then I couldn't get the recorder going, but I think I have this. So hopefully this is recording right now and I don't have to go back and do this again. But yeah, so thank you for being here, Courtney. I know you have a busy time during this COVID. You're all stuck at home, but you just recently gone back to work.
Yeah, this last week was the second week back, and we're definitely doing like a slow and thoughtful relaunch.
Right. And just for the people that don't know what you do, you're a physiotherapist. Right? You work at Optimized Physiotherapy. What would you say your specialty is with that? You're pretty general right now, but you do.
Absolutely. So from Optimize in general, we're a sports injury clinic, and so we work with a lot of athletes, a lot of people who do different events, different sports, a lot of CrossFitters. We're attached to CrossFit Armory, which is amazing because we have access to the gym. So we see a lot of people who have pretty athletic goals. Right. And so it's not just about like making it so that you don't have back pain while you're sitting, but so that you can lift 150 pounds over your head without pain.
Right. Yeah, and get back to that. So, it's a CrossFit gym that is attached but not with Optimized, but in the same building as far as I understand it?
Yeah. Right. So like kind of partnered, I suppose. Like two different businesses, but we have a door like between us.
Right.
So.
Okay. So how is that for you being tied in with CrossFit? Because and maybe I'm wrong on this, but just from what you hear all the time is the injuries with CrossFit and how easily you can get hurt. Do you find that is a conflict or any different? Do you not want to fully talk about what CrossFit can do? Like, do you ever find any compromises there or anything odd about that?
It's interesting because I think that we're very lucky that the CrossFit gym that we're attached to does a really good job at what they do. So I think that a lot of the issue that some physios take with CrossFit is that just I'm not sure what the word is, but like the competitive aspect of it. A lot of people like that is one of the best things about CrossFit is that it really pushes people to go that extra mile to excel. But sometimes, or actually a lot of the time, that's when you get hurt.
Exactly, when you're at that point.
Yeah. And so if you're not doing things with good form and you're just trying to finish the movement, that's when you tend to get hurt. But with the Armory, at least, like they have really great coaches who are watching their people in the gym, making sure that they're not doing anything crazy, supporting them to get those PRs and everything that they want to get, but doing it safely. And so like we do see a lot of like repetitive stress injuries coming in from there, but like not nearly as many as you'd expect.
Yeah, right. And I was going to say, if you were to do CrossFit, if you had the option to have a physiotherapy place that is in cahoots with it right there on site almost, that's really what you want, right? And then if you ever, they were doing things with bad form, I'm sure they have great coaches and stuff, but you have people that know the physiology and have went to school for many years to learn all that stuff, and you have that right at your disposal, right? I'm sure that's not an option for everybody. If you wanted to get into CrossFit, you'd have to be pretty lucky to have something like that with Optimize and whatever the Armory is what it's called. Having that all together, that'd be great to have.
Absolutely. And it's really cool because like we go out in the back and we take our patients out into the gym, into the Armory when they're not running classes. So we'll so I had a person who was what's the word? He's basically
like a CrossFitter or
no. I want to say heavy man, but that's not the word.
Bodybuilder, weightlifter.
No, it's weightlifting, but like the really, really heavy
Strongman?
stuff. Strongman. Yeah. He's a strongman competitor.
Heavy man competitor. I love it. I think that's what they should call it.
Yeah. So he's a strongman competitor, and so like he's used to deadlifting and squatting like 500 pounds, and he pulled his hamstring.
Ooh, I know all.
And
about
so.
it.
And so.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, I pull my hamstring about once every 2 months. Anything I do with my legs, and Courtney's a physiotherapist and has given me stretches on probably about 9 different occasions to stop it from happening, and I haven't listened. So I got a good nice look when we brought up a popped hamstring.
Yeah. But so basically for him, like he can do like hamstring curls and all sorts of things until the cows come home, and that's not going to trigger his issue because he's like at the beginning, yes, but like he's not somebody who like he just needs to be able to do like a 25-pound hamstring curl. He needs to have super strong hamstrings, and it's hard to give him the go ahead to
push it
go back to deadlifting 500 pounds to squatting 500 pounds if I haven't seen him do something that is actually challenging, like your standard band or your standard hamstring curl machine isn't just going to.
Oh, so you're saying that's where the Armory comes in, where you can kind of go in and push limits more. So if you're in a traditional physiotherapy setting with the equipment you have, right, with bands and stuff, you might not be able to push it to those levels with those athletes that need that extra level to push. Right.
Yeah, so that's a real big benefit. Or we'll have people who like they're like, like it's not keeping me from doing anything, but like I'm really looking forward to getting my like my overhead snatch like PR, and I'm starting to get some pain right in that overhead position when I catch. And like you can get them to do all of the manual muscle testing that you want, and they're not going to be painful because it's not in that position, and it's not like I might not be able to give them 100 pounds of pressure in that overhead position, but then we take them out into the gym and we get them to show us what they're doing, and then you can actually see where like what their body form is doing, what the rest of their body is doing. And
so is that one of the main differences? Because like you hear about like physio places and then you hear of sports physio. Is that one of the bigger differences? Is that the equipment capable can push it to further limits like that? Like, is that one of the big changes between just a run-of-the-mill therapy place and a sports physio place?
I don't.
Or is it more?
I don't know necessarily. I think that like they're like you could see somebody who markets themselves as a sports clinic. And they might not necessarily have that equipment there. I think that a lot of them are starting to, and I think that that's somewhere that physio is moving towards. But I would hope that most people who are marketing themselves as a sports clinic have that kind of stuff. Yeah. And there's definitely a couple facilities in Edmonton who do. But I'd say that like we have a lot of people who come in and they're like, oh man, like I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to do this because like I've been somewhere else and I thought physio was just going and like they pop ice on it and they pop a machine on it and then you go.
Yeah.
Whereas like at Optimize, it's very much exercise focused, which is where the evidence is. All of that other stuff is great and it does help to move the needle on pain for sure. And then some other modalities absolutely work for helping to just get them to the point where they can do the exercises within a responsible pain limit. But doing the work and doing the exercises is what will actually make somebody get better and to avoid re-injuring later on.
And that was funny. Something I found interesting when you're saying with all the COVID stuff, they were starting to do online therapies, and you were saying that it works good some of the time, but then it gives kind of that free reign for people not to do the homework, and they just want to come in and do it with you guys. And I think that's kind of a double-edged sword, is you guys do such a good job with them in-house that they really enjoy that, and it's easy because you guys walk them right through all the paces of this is, you're going to be lifting this at this torque, oh that's too high, that's too low, keep your arm right here. But then when they go home they don't do it. I'm a prime example of that because I think you showed me those hamstring stretches so many times, but I just don't want, and that's one of those things where it's kind of a double-sided if you do it so well in there. So what kind of things do you try and do to encourage them to go home? I mean, is it pretty much just it's up to that person, their will, and what they're going to do, or is there any kind of tips and tricks that you guys try and do to encourage them to do it, or
Absolutely.
is it just trying to explain them to get the point across of how important it is to make them see the light and just take it upon themselves?
Right. And I can only speak for myself, but I think that like the philosophy runs pretty well through all of us. Yeah. But basically, like as a physio, like we want to make ourselves not required by our patients. Like we want to really focus on self-efficacy and making sure that people know that they have the power to really affect what's going on in their body. And I think that for me personally, I give like that education piece for everybody on what we're going to do in clinic. But the fact that like whether it's doing like joint mobilization, some soft tissue work, I do dry needling, all of those things are basically temporary. And they might make you feel better in the short term. And we want to make them feel good to the point where they can do the exercises, but the exercises are the actual things that are going to make them better in the long term. So if you come in and you feel better, that's great. But if you don't do the exercises and the homework, that's when everything just shifts right back to where it was before. And especially if it's something that's like a repetitive injury, whether it's like from work posture or just the way that they're doing like a certain exercise, constantly re-aggravating it, it's just going to go back to what it was if they don't work on changing something. There's something that's got to be done differently.
So for yourself, how much of a split do you see between the people that just want to come in just to get the pain to go away or the people that want to come in for the functional fitness? And do you think that's different for Optimize where it's more sports and people that are wanting to get back out there and get active again? But I would imagine just from just what you see in the world, there's going to be a lot of people that just want the pain to go away. They don't really want to get back in action. And is that doing harm to their actual recovery because just making the pain go away doesn't actually fix the issue like you're saying?
Right. Well, I think that at Optimize, we're really lucky because we have such an athletic population. A lot of it is from the Armory. And so we see people who are used to like being physical is something that's in their routine, something that they enjoy and something that they're really motivated to keep doing, which really helps us along. Like they've done some of the accessory work. So it's not completely foreign to them to know like, oh, like if I work on these other muscle groups, it's going to make my lift stronger. It's going to make this movement easier.
And probably they've been through an injury or two. If they're athletic and they've been doing that stuff, they know what it's like about getting back from it, right? But I imagine you probably have some people on the other side of the coin that have never really had a major injury and they don't even know what the process of healing is like, right? Maybe they stubbed their toe or whatever. It might be their first major injury to recover from because that's a big blow. And not to change speed, but what mental health aspects of that? Because I know for myself, you know more than I do about having a bad back with your whole story that I don't know if we want to get into here, but you've had a bad back for how long? And so have I, right? It kind of runs in our family, but I know my mental health when I feel, just because I've been in that point where I've been stuck in bed for 3 days, and the mental health aspect of that is it's one of the most, it's terrifying because you, even though you've had that pain before and it's gone away, every time for some, and maybe this is just me, I don't know if this is with lots of people, but I imagine it would be, is this ever going to go away, or is this going to be that time where this is forever and I'm always stuck like this? It's that scariness. And then you're so upset because it wrecks every plan you had. You can't go out, you can't do anything, right? And I just found that was the biggest, if I feel a twinge of pain in my back, I almost get that sinking pit in my stomach of, oh my God, am I going to be okay, right? And that's a back, but if you hurt your knee, right, it just changes everything. And do you guys focus on that area to try and help with that mental health aspect, or do you guys just focus on getting them healthy because that's going to help their mental health, or do you guys try and put that in as part of your program?
Well, I think that you absolutely can't ignore that. I think that if you ignore that, you're really doing a disservice to yourself as well as the patient. We don't get a whole lot of training in that, so like we have to work within our scope. I think that we kind of have to recognize a couple different factors. So sometimes so for somebody who's been in a motor vehicle accident or has had a injury while working, that's something that can be really difficult because it comes out of nowhere, especially if they got hurt at work, if they've got some negative feelings towards their job already, that can cause a lot of negativity already towards that, which is difficult because the brain and the mind is so so integrated into your healing. And if you're in a negative spot about it, and like you're like, I didn't want to be there, I didn't want to be doing what I was doing, I got hurt, I just want to feel better, I don't want to have to do more to feel better because I didn't do anything like that was for me, or like that was my,
I didn't deserve this. I hate going to work and carrying concrete bags around all day, and it sucks. And now I hurt my back, and now I need to go do all this extra work and these exercises just to go back to that shitty job I hate. Like, I can imagine that'd be quite the spiral to get into.
Or like for people who like get into a motor vehicle accident, that can be really difficult because they did nothing. You were stopped at a red light 100%. And you got hit from behind. And I think that really scares people because like sometimes it's just a small tap and then they've got so much pain, and we hear that a lot. Like, I didn't expect it to be this bad. Like, or like I know people who've been in accidents and they felt fine after 2 days. It's really common for motor vehicle accidents for that pain to come on a couple days later. And it has a lot to do with like the situation. Like all of a sudden you've got adrenaline going. So your body is just not, it's just in survival mode. It's trying to figure out like what are the important things. Like you're like, I got to figure out what to do with my car, what to do with my insurance, call these 5 people, make sure everything's in order. And then like they wake up the next morning, or they wake up like a week later and they're like, oh wow, like now I'm starting to feel all this stuff. And then it's just really common because like say like you roll your ankle, that's one joint, but your back, which is almost always involved, your neck and your back, is a whole bunch of joints on top of each other. And so think about rolling your ankle like 12 times. It's just a whole bunch of joints, right? And it like with your ankle, you're able to like stay off of it. Yeah. But with your back, like it hurts it might hurt when you're sleeping. It might hurt when like you're driving, you're not able to do things that you were able to do before. It hurts when you change positions. And so it's just all encompassing, and it's really hard to not think about, which can be really scary.
So do you think that is not a disservice, but just, I guess first I'll ask that question after, but I wanted to ask another question is, how new is physio as a field? Is it fully figured out, or is it relative to some of the other fields in the medical practice? Is it newer, would you say?
I don't know for sure what the answer to that one is. I do believe that it's slightly newer.
The reason I say that is because I'm wondering if it is still evolving. What every medical
and it's absolutely evolving.
But I was wondering if that's a big piece of it, that mental health, because I think you see so much just the placebo effect, take everything else out of it, and just we've seen how strong that can be with everything, right? Now imagine, and we've seen how much positive outlook, and I'm sure you see it every day, how much positive versus negative outlook is going to be a clear shot at how well this is going to work, right? We see that all the time.
Absolutely.
But you nailed it on the head when you said, you get in a car crash and this wasn't my fault. I did nothing to deserve this, right? Buddy came into my lane, right? He hit me. Now I'm doing all this. And then
and then the stress that you have because you got to deal with your vehicle, you got to deal with this insurance.
It just puts you in such a negative mind space that, so where I was going with that is I wonder if they should make that part of your guys' curriculum to talk about that mental health. And I mean, I know you guys I got to see what it was like for you to go through that 4 years of that master's to get your physio degree. And I know it's a lot already to take in, and maybe it's just not feasible to add that on, but it almost seems like a necessary part of it because it is such a part of that healing process, is healing the brain and getting them in the right mind state to heal, right? I wonder if that would be a big step forward in the physio field to add that into theirs, right? And I know you said that you can do all these extra courses after the fact. Maybe that's just one of those ones, and then maybe they make it standard where it's too much to roll into the actual 4-year curriculum itself because you guys are already learning so much. But at another point, if they could learn that, do you think that would make a big difference?
Well, I think there's a couple things to pull apart there. So for physio, it's a 4-year undergrad, and then you do a 2.5-year master's.
Sorry,
yeah.
It seemed like a lot of years.
Yeah, it was a long time. So basically, like you do your undergrad, you just have certain requirements that you have to hit, and psychology is in there. Okay. But I mean, like it's like your intro psych.
Yeah, and I took intro psych, and it's very interesting. But for what we're talking about, it doesn't really get down to the nitty gritty of what you would need. It's interesting.
And then the 2.5-year master's is just like drinking from a fire hose.
I got to watch it. It looked insane. It made me so happy that I quit after 4 years. I mean,
absolutely.
I have my own takes on university and where I'll go, and maybe I'll write that down as a topic to get to after this. But you know, my 4 years was so much different than your undergrad, and then so much different from yours. But that was quite the thing to watch you go through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like it's a lot of information to learn. Like even though like you've got that 4-year basics, and like my partner's a physio who was trained in Australia, and it's a 4-year undergrad if you want to do it that way. They also have a master's there. But like, I see so much value in both ways to do it, because for him, he didn't take any of the fluff courses. Like, I took a whole bunch of just easy ones to bump my GPA
to try and get into it,
a competitive applicant for physio. And he didn't do any of that. Like, we took all the same classes in the end, between physio and the requirements that I had in my undergrad, but he got to be out 2.5 years earlier. So like, we're the same age, but he's been working for a lot longer than I have.
So did you find that those fluff classes, and maybe this will dovetail into my whole spiel on universities, but did you find that those fluff classes were all in the undergrad, and then when you got into the program itself, it was all useful? Or did you find even once you got in, was there anything that you thought like, either this is outdated, I know this doesn't work, or just because me, when I found that like the first year that I did, you just have to do random courses to get, you have to do a certain amount of requirements to apply for business, right? So I did 1 year, like you say, the psychs, your maths, your stats, and that was all kind of interesting, but it wasn't really business. I thought once I get into business, it's going to be so interesting, it's going to be all these things. And then I got into business, and there was some courses that worked, but then there were some courses that were just, you could tell they were just hacking stuff together to make another course.
Make a course.
Yeah, and so you'd spend your money, and it was so see-through to me. And not to everybody, because there's lots of people that had never worked, but I found that I worked from the time I was 12, right? So I had been at least around the workforce, not in any major part, but I could see where there would be like a negotiations class, and you go into it and they're telling you all this stuff on the textbook. It's like, that's not how you negotiate. I got to watch some pretty impressive negotiators. Our Uncle Barry, right? You can watch him negotiate with people, and you can't even stand beside because it's so good, right? He knows, he's done it for years. He has that, and it's all instinct,
innate,
right? And these little things, and there's maybe 1 or 2 things out of the textbook, but like all these little games you could play, like, that doesn't work in the real world because they're so see-through, right? Like if you want to negotiate, and I didn't read a book in that class, walked into the final, and the final was actually a negotiation with you and a person, with the professor watching, and I aced the class. I didn't do anything, but it was so frustrating to me. Like, why am I even here then? Why am I paying this much money? Why? And that was probably 80% of the business courses I found were that, right? Like when they taught you Excel, that was great, right? There were some market classes on like the energy markets that were really apropos to Alberta and what I wanted to do, or what I thought I wanted to do at that point, right? But then there was so much that wasn't. But I just wanted to see if that was the same for you, because I feel like it's so specialized. Maybe that wouldn't happen, but
So I do think that like the physio program itself, they're trying to cram so much in that they do their best to not put in that
which
stuff.
Is what I was thinking.
Which is like, there was a couple parts that were frustrating during the program, only in that like I took a really high level research based science undergrad, so I had a really strong background in reading research papers and all that kind of stuff, and we had like a whole class line where we had like every semester we had like a research based class, and it was just like rehashing the same stuff that was very obvious to me because I had already done it. But like for us, the evidence, and like that's what they tell you going in, like the stuff that you learn right now, in 10 years it might all be debunked. You have to be flexible. And I think that that's one of the things, like you meet a couple older physios who are still doing the same things that they learned 30 years ago. And it's not evidence based, and some of them are doing really well, and then some of them are the people who are still just putting ultrasound, ice, TENS, and then that's all you do.
Exactly, because I've been listening to you. My whole basis on what physio is, because I never went to physio really before. Maybe when I broke my hand I did a little bit of it, but nothing really. I was never really involved in it until you got into it. So then I had the way you explain physio and how intensive it is, and how much you're involved in all these different things. And then I see when Alyssa hurt her ankle or whatever, and she was doing it over in Winnipeg, she went to a physio and put ice on it. They put that little TENS machine on it, but it didn't seem like they really did much. And I was thinking, man, but it's such a wide swing, like you say, at a place like Optimize, where they're really, really on the cutting edge and wanting to learn these, and has younger staff that have just gone through it, right? You see that in every field, but mainly the medical field has a really big microscope on it, just because of the stakes you're playing with, right? Whereas you see the same thing in business, right? Where there's old school people that are still doing it by the book, right? And there's probably a big thing with the university, right? You still see those old people where things have changed and they don't know it, but they're in those positions of power, right? And that's what I think something that's really hurting, I think, society as a whole, is that of that there's so much holding on and people in those positions, right? And that people are working longer and longer and doing these things, right? And they're holding these positions. So you look at, in the States, it's a 77-year-old running against a 77, like it's crazy that we allow these crazy important positions, right? The university chancellors, the people that run these places, that are in these institutional places, CEOs, are so behind the pace of what things are, right? Because we're not handing that torch to these new people, right? Or there's so many roadblocks if you're trying to push through, right? Like, I couldn't believe when you started telling me about some of the women's health initiatives that you're trying to push through with Optimize. I'd never even heard of these as an issue with people, right? And maybe that's just the male-centric learning or just lifestyle that I've led and got to me to this point. But I was blown away when you're starting to tell me of all these different things that seem so important, and I would wish that everybody would know, but it seems like nobody knows about it, right? Like,
absolutely.
Could you maybe give us a little breakdown of some of those women's health things? Like, I know we've discussed pelvic health and stuff, and pre and post labor exercises and things that they can do, and these issues that these poor women that go through this beautiful but traumatic experience.
It
can be right but without the proper training, the proper know-how of what their body's going through and what they can do to help it. And then more so post, there's these issues that are just part of, once you have kids, when you go for a run, you might pee yourself, right? All these things, little things that just part of life, and people just think are natural because for last, 100 years, that was what the case was, because nobody knew all these new things. But times have changed, but nobody's caught up to the knowledge, right? And they just struggle through these things. So what kind of things do you think people are struggling through that they shouldn't be?
Yeah, I was going to say that is a massive box of topics.
Yeah, that's huge. I know, but I'm just trying to dive right into it. And we'll get to all of it, I'm sure, but just want to get right into it.
So things that people are dealing with that they don't have to. And I think that it's important to preface, like, you will often hear people say, like, it's very common, but it's not normal.
Right.
But I think that it's important to say, like, everybody's normal. Like, these things happen to people, and it's not your fault. Like, if you've done the exercises and you've worked with a pelvic physio and you're still having issues, that doesn't mean you're not normal. Your body is just doing its best with what's going on, and you just need to keep looking for different ways to do things. Because I know that some people get, like, it can be really mentally taxing to feel like I'm doing the work and I'm not getting better. So don't tell me I'm not normal, because it is normal. Like, it's very, very common, and it doesn't make you abnormal to struggle more so with some of these things.
But what I'm more so talking about is people that don't even know, about the exercise, don't know about all this, and just don't go to it. And I think what I was saying to you is another thing that has really changed my view on childbirth and just mothers in general. I've started listening to a few podcasts with female leads more so. I just, for whatever reason, I always listen to a couple, but I was mainly male dominated, just kind of how things go. But a little bit about parenting and just what it's like to go through in those couple weeks after, with postpartum, with just the recovery your body's going through, just the now not sleeping, your kids up all night, right?
Absolutely.
What I was saying to you is, this post-labor checkup with a women's health physiotherapist, right, or whatever you would call it, I don't even know what the right terminology is almost mandatory. But if you didn't have that already lined up before you had the child and had a date booked and stuff going, you're not going to go do this after. As soon as you do it, right, there's a great term that Christine Pazitsky uses on her podcast called The Dark Forest, right? And I think it's just something like the 3 to 6 months post-labor of just, you're not sleeping, all this stuff, you're barely there, right? If you don't have that planned out before, you're not going to be able to have a moment of clarity in that, I also need to go do this for me. And I think it's also maybe a feeling of being selfish, because I think you have so many hormones telling you to care and give everything you have to this being that you just created, right? That's all it's been telling you to do. That if you don't set that up before while I'm still thinking on my own, have the mental clarity beforehand to book this appointment and hold yourself to it and explain that. And that's what I was saying to you, is I think having a pre and post appointment would be just making that 100%. Mandatory, or just changing the culture so that people understood the importance of it, not making it mandatory, but just, it seems like it's almost the rarity that people even know there's such thing as a women's health physiotherapist and pelvic health therapist, right? They don't even know it exists, where I would just love to see that become widely known. And just, if someone said, I'm going for my pre-labor, what's the terminology so I can just use it? Like, what would that appointment be?
Oh yeah, like pre-labor, like pre-delivery.
Just something, if there's term where people I know what you're going through and I know what you're doing. Because I was blown away when you were telling me all the different things that your body's going through and the way that you could teach them to teach them ways to push without injuring themselves and all these things, that you really have to have an in-depth conversation beforehand, not when you're about to go through labor, right? All they tell you is, push, and that's what they're doing. Whereas there's ways where you can train them which muscles beforehand and kind of show them styles and what to concentrate on and all those things that they have. And I'm wondering, maybe with the online stuff, and there'd be more forums to teach that, but I think in person is one of those things where you need to have somebody that's educated with that.
Absolutely. So I think we have to circle back a little bit and discuss what a women's health physio is first off. So that's one thing that since graduating, I have decided to specialize in. So basically a women's health physio or a pelvic health physiotherapist is a physio who's taken advanced training, because it's not in our general degree, to assess pelvic muscles and to treat pelvic floor related issues. So I think that the pelvic floor is a place that just is generally not thought about, because you learn to hold your bladder and your bowels as a baby,
and then you forget about it pretty much.
And then you forget about it because you,
but
men have pelvic health too. I think that absolutely. And there are specialized men's pelvic health physios as well.
I didn't know that.
I know a couple in Edmonton. I haven't taken any men's pelvic health, but I think that there is a lot of overlap, but I wouldn't do a physical assessment on a man at this point until I've taken advanced training. Basically we've taken this training to be able to assess the pelvic floor muscles. And the best way to do that is doing an internal exam. But it's not an absolute requirement. So some women have gone through trauma. They're not comfortable with that. There's ways that we can work with understanding where they're at and doing some external assessments. But basically the best way to do an assessment is to do an internal assessment, and basically see are they able to connect to these muscles? And it's the same as any other muscle in your body.
Able to connect, you just mean like you'd be actually doing an exam. And do you think, I guess before we stop there, just to address the elephant in the room, do you think the awkwardness of that, I know it shouldn't be awkward and we're all adults, but just the taboo of that, do you think that's what's stopping it from breaking into the mainstream? Or do you think it's just not? Because my other question, I don't want to keep throwing questions at you to keep derailing you, but my other question is how available is that, right? If you're in, say, across Canada, if you're in any major city, would there be a pelvic health therapist, do you think?
Any major city, probably. I would hope so. It's definitely growing.
Right. So do you think, this is kind of my future question I was hoping to get to, but I guess I'll just ask it now, is do you think what's holding it back is the lack of therapists trained in it to give it that push forward for people to go to it? Or do you think what it needs to be is doing this and trying to bring that knowledge to people so that they can go seek it out itself, right? Kind of the supply and demand thing. If the demand is there, the supply will be fed, right? That's the biggest thing. So do you think it's just changing that culture to make it not taboo, right? Because especially when it comes, that's my thing, especially when it comes to pregnancy, all bets are off in terms of taboos and stuff. Have you ever seen a pregnancy? Why are we dancing around it? It's a silly thing, right? It's so ridiculous that we're going through that. And then, you have to do a pelvic health exam, right? Who cares, right?
Well, I think that it's interesting because, I don't have the exact figures in my mind, but women especially, and that's the research that I'm speaking to. And I think that it's probably similar, if not even more taboo in men to talk about their, any issues with incontinence, which is basically leaking, whether it's urine or stool. It's a lot more common than people think. And for women, it's absolutely part of our culture to kind of laugh about it. And it's kind of like a badge of honor. Oh, I laughed so hard I peed, or I was jumping on the trampoline and I peed.
And that's exactly what I was saying, because that's all I would hear about post-pregnancy and stuff before I started listening to these podcasts and started having these conversations with you. And that just seemed like part of the once you have a kid, you're going to pee a bit, right? And that's just one of the issues. But that was just and then I talked to you and you go, no, maybe. Like you said, someone could do all the exercise, and that's just how their body is, and maybe that is. But there's things that we can do that people aren't even aware of that can give you exercise, give you strengthening, all these things, right? The only strengthening thing internally is Kegels that anybody knows about, right? That anybody can name off the top of their head. That's the only thing they have. But you have all these interstitial muscles and all these things that you work with that nobody even knows about, right?
Absolutely. And I think that is almost harmful in itself because women just hear when you're pregnant, do your Kegels. Post-pregnancy, do your Kegels. And one thing is that Kegels are not the right exercise for every single person. A lot of women actually have a hypertonic or tight pelvic floor. Think about when you pull your hamstring and then you have that muscle is tight, right? It's injured and it's tightening up to protect everything. That happens in the pelvic floor too. So if you're constantly working on contracting that tight muscle,
you could be tightening it up even
absolutely
further. Right.
Not necessarily damage, but you could just be feeding into the system, feeding into the thing that's giving you pain. And then the other thing is that
not to, I know you seem to be going on that. Maybe I'll just write it down as my question. I'm trying, for everybody listening, I'm trying not to interrupt because I have a great habit of interrupting. I'm trying to write in my notes here, but then I just jump out. Now I forgot my question. Sorry, carry on. I'll try and remember it.
Yeah, so...
Oh, now I remember it.
Kegels is not the right exercise for everybody. But the other thing is that a large proportion of women are doing their Kegels incorrectly.
Oh,
so basically, a proper Kegel is isolating just your pelvic floor muscles. And if you can imagine, the pelvic floor is a set of muscles that kind of form a bowl between your pubic bone, which is the bone at the front of your pelvis, your tailbone at the back. And then if you think of your two sit bones, it's almost like a diamond. And then that's forming a bowl there. And so proper Kegel is just isolating those muscles. But a lot of women, when they feel that like they've got to sneeze, they've got to cough, or any situation that might cause them to leak, they squeeze their bum muscles, they squeeze their legs together. So they use their adductor muscles, and they squeeze their abdominals. And basically, especially with the abdominals, that actually creates more pressure in your stomach, which pushes down onto those pelvic floor muscles that are holding.
And that's what you were telling me about the training, the pre-labor training to show them how to push, because when they're telling them to push, they're just doing what goes on instinct. And what did you say? Everyone's instinct, the only time they've ever pushed in their life
is when they go poop.
Exactly, right? And that's what you told me. And as soon as you said that to me, it was like a labor. Like, oh, obviously if I was in labor and I was going, I would just push like I had to poop, right? And that's kind of what you always, as a man, I've always assumed that when women are in labor, that's what they're doing, is just pushing like they had to poop, right?
Yeah.
And but what you said to me was that can actually make it, like you said, contract your stomach. If you're squeezing with your stomach muscles, you're pushing down on that pelvic wall. Now that that opening that you're trying to create to push that baby out, you're actually making it worse, right? You're closing it down. So that what you were saying was beforehand, you can go in, show them how to push, which muscles to it's really difficult. What you were saying was, you said like you have to try and contract some muscles and keep some relaxed. And that's just not a very natural thing to do. And you kind of have to practice it beforehand to learn how to do it. But if you can get to that point, it'll make your labor a lot or it could help make your labor easier, right? And it could help with less tearing, I would imagine, less trauma, because if you imagine if you're pushing and squeezing things, it's going to come out sooner or later, but you're going to do a little more damage along the way, right? And that's what I was going to ask. So now if somebody has a tight pelvic floor, I think you called it, and was doing Kegels in that, could they, if say they got pregnant, they go, oh, well, I got to do my Kegels in preparation, right? That's what I've heard, right? And that's what most people have heard. Could they be making the labor harder on themselves by really tightening up their pelvic floor, or is that?
Yes and no. So I think that it's important not to make labor any more feared than it is.
Right.
Because I think that is a big thing, and it's interesting. I'm not sure exactly why it is, but when people talk about their labor, they talk about the horrors of it more than the beauty of it. Right. And like, that's not for every mom, but I think that as a younger woman, that's pretty much any time I think that people told me about it, like I kind of like sit back a little dazed afterwards, because it just sounds horrific. And like, I've met their little ones, their babies, and they're incredible, and they love them so much, and they've brought so much joy to their life. But they don't talk about like the incredible support they got from their partner or their midwife, or like the nurses who brought them ice chips, or any of the good experiences they had. Like, it's all about the hard parts. And I think that it's also important to remember that, like, evolutionarily, like, this is what our body is built to do. And there is some things that we can do to help it along and to optimize it. But like, I think that being too attached to a certain plan, like there's too many things that are unpredictable. I can see you going to interrupt.
You can see how my face. I have so many questions. Sorry,
but there's so many things that are unpredictable. And so I think that, like, to say that going to see a pelvic health physiotherapist is going to decrease your risk of injury. It's going to make your labor easier. It's going to do all of these things. You can't say that for everybody. Everybody's different. You might have a birth plan that goes completely sideways. And that's okay. And it's okay to be upset about that as well. And I think that a lot of women don't talk about how upsetting and how, like, they grieve the birth that they didn't have, because they were expecting this beautiful like ceremony at home, and they were going to do it all natural, no drugs. And then something goes sideways that was completely not in their control, and then they feel guilty that they didn't bring their child into the world the way that they wanted to.
And you probably built that up for probably longer than
Absolutely.
I'm sure some people really have.
And people have really strong beliefs about this stuff.
And also you hear about women planning their wedding from the time they're like 6 years old, having a book, but in maybe not the same way, but in a similar way, right? Childbirth is another one of those womanhood experiences that every girl hears about, right? And that is one of those that's just like a coming of age kind of thing, right? And you hear this, and I'd never really thought of that. Yeah,
and you definitely have 9 months to figure it out. But like, there are women who have thought about this for a long time. Like, I've thought about it, or I've talked about it with friends of mine, partially because this is an interest of mine, and some of my friends are getting to the age where it's important to start thinking about these things. But they're starting to think about these things, and like, they've got ideas about how they want it to go. And so basically what I'm getting at is that there are things to do to like create a better chance for things to go the way that you want, and to create a better chance for things to go well and to decrease risk of injury. And for a lot of people, it works really well. But like, I just...
You don't want to say anything too set in stone, because everyone's different.
Absolutely. Everybody's different.
And you have to be so delicate about all these things. And I think what I was going to say is, I think I'm just inserting I think I'm projecting a little bit, because I was inserting myself. If I was pregnant, right, just on the opposite, in the magical world, if you could make that happen, I would want to do everything I could, and to plan and know all these things and know the mechanics of it, right? Because that's how my brain works. If I'm scared of something, right, like you say, you don't want to make it sound scary. But I found for myself, and there's probably a lot of women that think the same way, is I want to know every single thing about it, so that I know what I'm getting into, and I know right, if things go wrong, I know what's going to happen. If things go right, I know what's going to happen, right? And I think that is kind of where I'm going through. But if, say, I was in this magical world where I was a woman and I got pregnant 2 years ago, I wouldn't know any of this. I wouldn't even know a pelvic health therapist existed. And I would hope that at that point I would do my research. But I think a lot of people, instead of what people call doing research these days, is just talking to the people that you talk to, your moms, your aunties, the women in your life that you're close to, that you can ask those things, because again, it is still a little taboo. And they're just telling their story of when they had their kid 20, 30 years ago and what they went through, right? But things have changed so much, and I was so shocked that there was so much of this I didn't know, and just had like no understanding. Not even, I know there was that, but I don't know how it works, but I know that's a service that you can go get. I didn't even know that was a thing, and I didn't know how important it was. And can you imagine? And I was thinking, if I had my wife and she was in labor, I would want her to know all these things, and I would have, right? It's just, I want the word to get out, and I'm hoping doing stuff like this. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to hear this, right? Especially right off the bat, right? Being the first one. But that's one of those things I want to spread that message and let people know that, because it is important, right? And
absolutely.
And even if it's insanely important to 50% of the population, but even all the men,
it's important to support your partner.
Just as important to support your partner, and especially just not even projecting now, because that would be my thoughts on childbirth. I'd be there with the woman I love and be so concerned for her and child. If there was anything that we could have done pre or post to make it easier on her and make it safer, I would hate myself if I didn't do everything I could, right? And it's just there's this huge benefit that they could by going to these therapists and learning these things beforehand, that there's probably people that go through, and if they would have known, they would have done it for sure, right? And they never would. I bet you there's people in our lives that have had kids recently that didn't do that, or still to this day don't even know that that's an option, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that it can be quite isolating as well, because like, think about like, if you knew that like you have a issue with holding your urine, and so like you need to have a bathroom within like eyesight. Then all of a sudden, like, you're scared to go to the store, you're scared to go to a social outing, you're scared to do all of these things that are super important. Or like you want to go back to the gym and like you don't feel safe doing that.
You don't
and
do
I think
squats,
that
you don't do sprints, because that's what I was talking about. Or not what I was talking about, what I was hearing on Christina Pazitsky's podcast, which if you guys, I'm going to talk about it a lot probably on this, because it's a similar theme. It's called Where My Mom's At, and it's hilarious. She's a stand-up comedian. She talks about motherhood. Great podcast. And that's where I really started getting into this. Before I started talking to you about it, was just I realized how much, even on the, not this side, but just about motherhood and what it's like to go through it, and just things I didn't know. And something that I wanted to get to on that same vein, and that was what I was trying to interrupt you, that you caught me with the look in my eyes that I was trying to interrupt you, was it's very interesting to hear her talk about where you said they always hear about the bad and you don't hear about the good with pregnancies, or it's predominantly one way or the other. What she was saying was she was really shocked and taken aback by what she was led into with the post pregnancy, not postpartum, but just the next couple of months after that dark forest that she always refers to, how what she's hearing on Instagram is, oh, this is a miracle. I love my baby so much and all this stuff. And then for her to have postpartum and to, you know, not have that same
postpartum depression, you mean?
Yeah, postpartum depression and just it is hard. Even if you don't have postpartum, it's still a hard slog. You're up all night and all that thing, and all you're hearing from all these other people posting on Instagram and that, you know, this is a beautiful joy. I can never been this happy and all this. And
then you feel guilty.
And then she feel guilty that's not what she. And I was just blown away by that. I didn't even know that was a struggle that women are going through. And then she has guests on. They talk about everyone has that same story. It's just I'm supposed to be just the happiest time of my life. This is going great, but really they're sleeping 2 hours a night and their hormones, like you said, you just had a baby inside. Or your organs are pressed up into your chest, and they're all finding their way back down to where they should be. Like, you're going through this incredible process, and from the outside in of what you think you're supposed, what you've been led to believe all your life is this is going to be amazing. This is going to be so, and then you're almost set up for failure to go through that, right? And they talk about you love that kid so much it doesn't matter, and you get through that, and you like, that's why she loves that dark forest reference, because it's a forest that has an end. You get out of it, right? You just have to know that. But when you've been told that you're about to walk into
the best moment of your life.
You're thinking you're walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You go up, he does his tumble salt and on his cane, right? He sticks out of the ground. You walk through the doors, and you're in this nightmare. Well, not a night, you know what I mean? But just
a really difficult time.
The culture shock, not the right word, but the shock that you would feel of that. Just, it was like, oh my God, I never even thought of that, right? And I like to think of myself as a very open-minded. I have very wide-ranging interest into all these different areas, but that was such a blind spot to me that it was such. And I found what I was almost more surprised than anything is how much I enjoyed those podcasts, right? Like these ones that are about motherhood and all these issues, but it's just as interesting to the men, or I guess myself. But she's also said, like, she was amazed by the outreach she's getting in emails and stuff from men saying, like, I just clicked into it because that's what I did. She's a great comedian. She has a great podcast with her husband that's more just silly and funny. And I thought, she's just so funny. I'll listen to it. It's probably about mother. I probably won't like it, but I was just engrossed. I love it. It's one of my favorite ones. I listen to it every time it comes out. I watch it instantly when it comes out on YouTube, and I watch it. And I just, I'm so happy for that, because how many motherhood forums is that where a comedian can do it, right? To bring some levity to it, keep it interesting. You laugh your ass off the whole time,
and to talk about the darker
exactly,
parts of
not
it
be
as
scared.
well.
And she is dark, right? She's had a pretty fun life. If you go listen to her, she's had quite the upbringing. She's seen that darkness, so she can really connect with those people, right? If all you're getting is that the one side of the story of everything's beautiful, right? And that might, who knows, that might be you might
some people have that
and
experience.
you might have all the support in the world. You might have the greatest grandparents in the world that come and help you out and stuff. And that's another point of I think where society is getting away from. And I was listening to it on another podcast with Eric Weinstein. He was talking about the importance of the grandmother and the support that you need to make a family, and that just the female archetype and how we don't respect it as much. And I think me and you have had those conversations. It's more less so on this, but just the overall matriarchy split, and not appreciating all they do for society and all the caring and all they do, and going through those dark forests, right? Almost if that's a pretty common experience, right? There might be the odd one that it's amazing, and but even if it is amazing, there's going to be times.
There's still hard times.
Yeah, exactly. Just, it can be amazing, but if you're sleeping 2 hours a night, that's just there's a limit to the amazingness, right? You can have all the support and be loving and be, filled to the brim. Your cup's full, but you're only sleeping, right? Just the sleep alone. Absolutely.
And if you think about, like, if you were going to get any major surgery, say like some sort of abdominal surgery, or if you were getting a joint replacement, you would go to the surgeon and they would say, okay, I'm expecting you to do like 6 to 8 weeks of prehab, so pre-surgical strengthening, to make sure that you are in the best position possible to go through the surgery. You'd have the surgery, and then you would have a protocol to follow. You'd have expectations on, like, okay, so for the first week or the first 2 weeks, you are completely off of whatever you've just had operated on. At that point, then you're able to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't want you to lift 10 pounds over your head or above your chest or from the ground. And then at 6 weeks, once you get a clearance from the surgeon, like, we're going to check you, we're going to see how you're doing. If you're good to go, then you go see a physio, and then the physio leads you through like a couple weeks to a couple months of rehab centric exercises. But for women who are pregnant, they often on like their pre-delivery visits, if they're told anything, it's to do their Kegels. A lot of doctors, it's actually quite surprising. They don't know that physios do this.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, even the
and how evidence-based it is. Yeah, absolutely. And like, it's unfortunate. I can't remember what the actual stat is, but it's something like evidence takes 10 years to make it into the medical field. And there's people who are working on changing that, but it takes a while, and it just takes like that good experience for like the woman to go back to her OBGYN and be like, you know what actually really helped? Like, remember I was dealing with that pain, like, and then I went and saw the physio and we did X, Y, and Z and we had a really good experience, and then they're connected now. They know that exists.
Exactly. And they start to build a relationship, right?
Absolutely. But then like most women have a 6-week check post delivery, and the OBGYN says, yeah, you're good to go. You're good to start exercising, start slow and build back up to, or like that's generally, and I shouldn't say that every single one does this, but I'd say that in general, that's relatively common, is for like, they go to their 6-week check and they're told, okay, yeah, you're good to go, slowly get back into it. And then unfortunately we live in a society where, like, again, social media, all sorts of expectations about getting your body back.
Yeah, you see that the mother posting the Kim Kardashian pics of
Yeah.
just had a baby back down to my normal weight, right? And they have the pictures 2 weeks later, right? And imagine the expectations you're setting for these poor women that are going through.
Absolutely.
And every pregnancy is different, right? There's always going to be like there's going to be damage to your body. You're going through a traumatic experience, even if it goes as best as possible. It's the easiest labor. Everything goes to plan. It's great. You're still going through that, but the wide range of that. And you think of like you said, internal surgery, like you got a piece of your colon removed, say.
Yep.
They know pretty standard what that recovery is going to be like. It may dictate because of biodiversity and everybody's different. It could dictate, a couple weeks here and there, but they know the general parameters. But labor is such a wildly varied thing. You can't say a 4-week recovery time is, that might be average, but that could swing, because there might be those on Instagram that's just how their body works, and that's how they had an easy pregnancy. Their body just got lucky, whatever it is. Maybe they did the work, maybe that's the reason, whatever the reason being, but it sets those bad examples, right? Or not bad examples, but just high expectations of these people. And then to try and go in and, like you say, feel
Absolutely.
so alone of, I should be here, why am I not like this? I can't do that. Like, she's out at the gym, I still can't get out of bed. Like,
absolutely.
Can you imagine the feeling? Oh, it'd be terrible.
No, I know. And like, if you think about it, like your body, when it's gone through birth, whether that is a vaginal delivery or a C-section. Right. And a lot of women think like, oh, I had a C-section delivery, I didn't have any tearing, like I don't need pelvic health physio. But if you think about it, you had 9 months of having a baby, uterine fluid, extra weight, all of that stuff pushing on the pelvic floor.
Exactly.
So it does have an effect. And then you've just had a major surgery through your abdominal muscles, which also need to be rehabbed. But so regardless of what kind of birth, delivery, how difficult it was, what complications there were, you now have a new baby in your life. Your life is completely shifted. Your body tends to be in a state of stress. So like, you're not sleeping very well. Sleep is incredibly important for healing. Your hormones can be all over the place, just like, because like you had a baby that they're keeping in your body and now you don't. And so everything's trying to find its set point again. But then you're also
breastfeeding, there's different hormones for that.
Breastfeeding. Yeah, absolutely. But then stress hormones have a massive effect on your healing. And that can also affect your digestion, because if you're in that fight or flight mode where you've got all your stress hormones going, things like digestion get really screwed up, because digestion is not one of your body's priorities to keep going. You might not have the time to be meal prepping and cooking like a really nutritious, like fiberful meal, because you're not sleeping or your baby's fussy, or like all of the priority tends to go to the baby. But all of these things need to be taken into consideration in your healing. And again, like it's totally natural to put all the focus on the baby, but I think that there needs to be a lot more focus on the mom.
For sure. Oh, 100%. And I think it also needs a change in mindset for that to be okay, because
absolutely, it has to be okay.
And it's like a pendulum, right? Because everybody understands that you have to focus on the mom, except the mom at that point, or she might intellectually understand that, but you're being told by every hormone in that body to disregard anything for yourself and go to that kid. That's like, that's what evolution has brought us to, right? That's what it's trying to tell you. So you have to go, and that's why I was saying, I think it should be something that's almost, I wish you could make it mandatory. We have to see a pelvic health physio before,
and that's the dream.
After. And that's the dream, right? And this is how it starts, right? Educating
and maybe
people,
it will be one day.
And that's what I'm saying.
And I hope it is.
Like
it's so evidence based. They see such great results from people who are doing the work, doing the homework, and getting checked. Like it works so well. and again, not for everybody, but a very big percentage of people really benefit, if not like get completely better with whatever they're dealing with. And I think it's important to quickly just touch on things that like a women's health physio helps with. And not everybody will experience these things pre or post birth, but it's also really common in young female athletes, especially high level athletes. Yeah. So there's a couple different things that can, gymnasts, soccer players, like there's a couple different things that just tend to affect your pelvic floor. So basically part of the pelvic floor attachments are like sitting on some of your hip rotators. So if you do a sport like soccer where you have to rotate your leg a certain way, and then like you have an issue with your hip, that can start to cause issues with the pelvic floor. So I know a lot of young girls who, like, once I took a couple of these courses, or I shouldn't say young girls, but like young women between like 22 to 30 who have never had babies, who like once it became okay to talk about it, they're like, oh yeah, like I always like have to go pee right before I go on the treadmill. And if we're doing sprints at practice, I wear a pad because I know that I'm going to pee.
I hadn't even thought of that. Just when you said kicking, my immediate thought was you look at those Muay Thai people over in Thailand and these kids from a young age and kicking with those hips. I bet you every woman that grew up doing that, or maybe they have a natural propensity for it because they start doing it from a young age. Maybe the pendulum swings.
And not everybody.
But I didn't, like I said with the other thing, I didn't even know it was an issue until you just told me that. I didn't even know it was an issue. I always thought that it was either just a natural born thing. I didn't know that sports could cause that, right? But that's where you got to get that message out. Let people know that that's, that's fine. Like
it's common.
It's common. Exactly.
It's common. And it's not. And there's things that you can do for it.
That's the biggest one right there. Exactly. There's things to be done for it, because that's the one where I was always hearing about the pregnancy thing, and like you said, it's a badge of honor. It's kind of a giggle, right? Everyone commiserates about that. But if there's something you could try and do for it, maybe it won't work, but at least take a shot at it, right? The freedom that you would regain from that is just
100%. And that's huge.
For sure.
It's huge. So incontinence, so leaking of urine or stool, because some people have tears that tear so far that they tear into their rectum, and then they have issues with holding their bowels as well. Which, if you can think about being embarrassed about leaking urine, you never hear about people leaking stool, and so
can't imagine.
But like that's the thing,
it
though.
Should
like,
be fine, right? To come out and talk about it, especially after pregnancy. Like that's what I'm saying. I just wish, because to me. But I don't think like most people. I have a very weird brain. I think of things very literally and logically. Sometimes that just makes no sense. Like all taboo, like it makes no sense. How is it taboo? They just went through pregnancy. That, to me, that breaks all taboos. No, you just went through pregnancy. Anything consequence of that should be free game. It's not funny. It's not, but that's just me, how I look at things. But I don't think I wish more people thought of it that way. But it just seems so. I get frustrated with it because it seems so obvious to me. I get frustrated with a lot of things. You've probably grown up with me. I get when things aren't efficient or the best. I just get so mad. Like, how can you not? It's so obvious, right? After that the first conversation we had about this, I was just sitting there angry. Well, how is this not Thai? How is it not mandatory that they have a pre and a post? Like, this is so obvious.
Absolutely.
But then I go through my anger thing of that. Okay, so now what is the best ways? What are the avenues to bring it to the point we want? Right. First step, talk about this on podcasts. Get this, get that to a level of understanding, right? The more people talk about it and ask for it, the more people go into it. Now the field itself can drive forward because you have more prospects. But then something I was just thinking, actually, as you said, OBGYNs. Do you think there could be a push to make it mandatory for an OBGYN? Because you couldn't do this with every doctor. But if you specialize in pregnancy, it makes sense to me. Like a couple years ago in the oil field, that's what I know. They mandated certain companies over a certain size have to have a safety officer, right? Let's say you have 10 employees, you need to have a safety officer. To me, if you were designating yourself by going through and becoming an OBGYN, you're designating yourself as a pregnancy expert, right? You should almost be mandated to have not training in it, but at least have a referral to the closest one. Right. So that, and you should be starting giving them, right? Tying that into the OBGYN. Maybe you can't get it through the whole medical field, but just taking those small steps of attaching it that way. Do you think that'd be something that could be done, or do you think that'd be just too hard?
It's hard because there's not a lot of public funding for physiotherapy, and every year it tends to get less and less. And so currently to see a women's health physio through like AHS through public funding, it's about a 2-year wait.
Wow.
And so it's really on the woman to have insurance or the funds to be able to do it herself. And so I think that that's a lot of pressure to put on women who are already like preparing for a baby. They've got a lot of other things to do. So I think that I hope that it becomes more and more common for it to be suggested for a woman to go get a pre-check. And we can talk about things that we do before versus after. But to go at some point before delivery, and then to go once they've had their 6-week clearance from their
doctor,
from their OBGYN post delivery, see where they're at, see that it's safe to do so, and then to discuss their goals, because I think that was one of the things that really struck me. I can remember the first pelvic health physiotherapist I met. I met her in Nashville when we were on going to a conference with our dad for work. And she told me, like, I had just gotten into physio.
Oh, right, yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, wow, welcome to the field." And I asked her, she's like, "I'm a physio as well." And I said, "Oh, what are you working?" And she said, "Pelvic health." And I'd never heard of it. And then she explained it. And I remember feeling awkward and thinking, like, well, you do what? you put that where? Like, and she was super comfortable.
Yeah, because you've been doing it, right? Yeah.
Yep. But that definitely planted the seed in my head. And then going through the program, you touch on it a little bit, and then there's the opportunity to take an elective. And I can remember taking the elective, and we're discussing the different changes that happen to the body. And one of the things that is really common in social media right now is talking about diastasis recti. What is that? And so basically, diastasis recti is a separation of the 2 six-pack muscles in the front. Oh. So, but that's completely normal. That happens with everybody. So if you think about, like, you're growing a baby, and the baby needs room, like, your spine is in the back. It can't go backwards. It's going to push out frontwards. And so that is a natural thing that happens. There's a space between those 2 sets of muscles called the linea alba.
Like, are you saying split down the middle, like 3 on this side, 3 on this side, separating towards your obliques?
like 1, 2, 3, like this.
Okay, so not the top 2 going upwards. You're talking about the 3 splitting to the side. Oh.
No, so like if you think about your classic six-pack muscles right in the front there.
That's clearly
so those
evidence right here.
Yeah. And so they're attached by some fascia in the middle called the linea alba. Right. And gotcha. But basically, as the baby pushes forward, it needs some room, and that's a natural accommodation that your body makes. Is that fascia in the middle thins a little bit, and spreads so that those muscles move a little bit to the side, to allow the stomach to go forward. And so once the baby's gone, there's no more pressure to that, and the body has to, like, go back to what it was.
Fascia back up.
Tightening, sometimes that does happen. So, but sometimes women will have a distinct separation. And for some people, it never bothers them again. And for some people, it's the look. I think that is a big driver of people wanting to imagine. Or to be scared of having diastasis recti, because they're worried about having this, like, stomach bulge, which is really unfortunate because it really takes away from celebrating that they created a human life.
Yeah. You would hope that the aesthetics wouldn't be a negative driver, right? But you have to understand that's human nature, right? And
in society
for sure.
today.
And you can't even blame people for that. That's totally normal, right? Like, that's
absolutely 100%.
So the fascia spreading out, sometimes it's a permanent one, but sometimes there's things to be done, I was imagining.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for a lot of women, they're like, "Oh, I have this, I need surgery." Right. That's not necessarily the case. So if it's purely aesthetics, there's only so much that can be done depending on the level of separation to get everything to look to what you want.
But you almost, even if it is just aesthetics, on the off chance that you could help it with it, you should try it before surgery. You should do anything before surgery, right?
And I think that a lot of people think like it'll be a surgery, you'll be done, like no problem. But it's like
major surgery,
8 weeks of not being able to pick up your kids, because it is affecting your abdominal wall. Right. And again, like, there's very set protocols once you have this surgery on what you can and can't do, and slowly getting back into exercise, which there isn't for pregnancy.
I know, it's crazy, eh? So crazy.
But there are things that can be done to get you back into the level of activity with engaging the core muscles properly, so that doesn't get worse. Because basically, if you're constantly pushing pressure on that thinning fascia, you don't want that to increase.
Right. Yeah, because it's already a little bit compromised, right?
Yeah.
If you're not doing any strength exercises, it's will continue to be compromised.
And I remember being in the elective and hearing like, once you are pregnant and you've had a baby, you should never do sit-ups again. You should never do leg raises. You should never do all of these things.
Where
and
did
in my
you hear
mind,
that?
in the elective.
Wow.
And I think that this is so like, this is now something that's being pushed back on. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, like as somebody who really loves being athletic and really enjoys doing sports and doing all of these movements, like that's something that I like, that just doesn't sit right with me, that I'll never be able to do this if I decide to become a mom.
And maybe, I know you're not the expert opinion, you want to stick to the science, but just for me, of my bullshit meter, that doesn't seem right. Right? Yeah. There should be something you can do, right? And I don't know if that's true or
and you've seen like moms do sit-ups.
Exactly. So it just is like, well, that can't be right. But so they were teaching you that though. That's what gets me, is when that goes back to my thing with universities, where sometimes they're teaching you things that are so far out and it seems so obvious to you, and it's just so frustrating that you're paying all this money and you're getting outdated information, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, and everybody has a different level of comfort with this, but the more that I've taken different courses from different instructors and because that just did not quite sit right with me. It becomes like there are ways to do these things and ways to really connect with your core and make sure. So a lot of people don't know that, like when they think of their core, they think of the 6-pack muscles, but the core is really, what?
Isn't it behind like your 6-pack? Like your core?
So your core is basically made up of 4 different major muscles. So your pelvic floor is the bottom, your diaphragm is the top, and then you've got transversus abdominis, or we call it TA. So this is below those.
That's below your
that
obliques?
wraps. Yeah. So like right by like your obliques are here, your rectus abdominis is here.
Right.
And then below that, you've got the transverse abdominis, which comes around like a corset.
All right. Oh, okay. But lower, around like the hip core. I'm just thinking if people are just listening, trying to, when you're saying here and here.
So like below, like closer to your guts.
Right. Yeah. Like down
like
by your intestines. Yeah. The ones that are kind of wrapped around.
But like, so like they're deeper. They're not superficial. Like if you imagine like those, like your obliques and your rectus abdominis are on top.
You know when those guys on
below.
Instagram are always showing off and they got their pants pulled right down, you see those 2 kind of V's? Joe Rogan officially likes to call it the dick root. Is that what we're talking about? Where it kind of cuts down?
No.
Not what we're talking about?
No, it's below those.
Below that?
Yeah. So if you think about, no. So if you're thinking below is like from your head to your toes, you're thinking
deeper. Like it's
deeper.
Underneath
deeper.
that.
Underneath that. So it's underneath. Yeah, it's underneath your rectus.
I'm just trying to paint a picture, you know?
Yeah. So then you got the transverse abdominis, which wraps around. Right. And then you've got your multifidus muscles, which are back extensors. So right by your spine. Right. So ideally, all of these guys are going to work together to have a strong core. So once you've been pregnant, regardless of what the delivery was, if you had a vaginal birth, like chances are that those pelvic floor muscles were stretched. And even if you didn't have a vaginal birth, like they had 9 months of having a growing weight on them, which can cause some changes there as well. But if you've had a vaginal birth, you might have had some tearing. That changes the integrity of the muscles right there. If you've had a C-section, you've had an incision through the front of that core. And so basically, regardless of what's happened, you want all of these muscles to move or to work together and to connect with the breath and just to do what they like. Basically, it's just getting them back to doing what they naturally do. And so it's interesting in a time like now where everybody's quite stressed out. Something that we tend to do in stressful times is we tend to do something called apical breathing. So basically, you breathe with the upper part of your chest. So like we tend to see people's shoulders moving. They might have a lot of tension in their neck. And they tend to like flare their ribs out as they breathe. Right. Where ideally we want to be able to like have that diaphragm drop as they take a deep breath, breathing into the stomach. And being, and at the same time as that diaphragm is dropping, that pelvic floor should be relaxing. It's kind of like a piston.
Right.
So naturally, without thinking about it, as you take a deep breath in, your pelvic floor should naturally relax a little bit. And as you breathe out, it should eccentrically, or it should like come back to neutral. But when you're breathing up in your chest, that tends to, like, you don't have that natural, that lengthening of the pelvic floor, accompanying the diaphragm going so low. So that can cause things to get tighter, or to get like the pelvic floor gets used to working in that shortened range. And then they don't have that that length. And ideally, if you think about an elevator being at neutral and there's five floors that you can go up and there's 5 floors that you can go down. If you are only able to go from ground to the 5th floor and back to ground, like that's like if you, sorry, a better example might be, say your bicep muscle. Right. If you had your arm at 90 degrees and you were only able to go from 90 to bring your hand towards your shoulder, that is only half of 100% of what that muscle could do. Right. And so then when you think about what is the pelvic floor,
does it atrophy at all if you're not working into that range, or does it just like not have the flexibility to go there, or just it's not natural for it? It doesn't have that muscle memory of being able to go down where it should be.
It's really dependent on the person, I think, but it can shorten. Right. So then you need to work on like getting it used to lengthening again, and that's a process. You don't expect somebody like maybe like on day 1 they can go to like the first basement. Right. Like out of 5, and then they work on that. They come back and see you in a couple of weeks, and now they can get to like 2.5. Right. And then like you go through that. Like it's with any injury. Like I wouldn't expect somebody who came in to see with me with like a strained rotator cuff muscle. I wouldn't expect them to come back to me 3 days later and be perfectly well. Exactly. It's a process, and I think that like people need to give themselves some grace and realize that it's totally okay to be where they're at. They're taking the power into their hands, and there's things that they can do to make these things better. And they just have to be aware that like it'll take a little bit of time, and like you have to be patient with it. For sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that like something that I'm just recognizing I didn't really talk about is the other things that like other indicators that like you could go see a pelvic health physio for. So we talked about incontinence, whether that's of urine or of stool, pelvic pain. So for that could be like some deep abdominal pain, pain with sex, like really deep hip or deep back pain. Other things are prolapse. So basically a prolapse is having some of the organs coming into the vaginal vault. So there's a couple different ways that can happen. So you can have the uterus coming down, the bladder coming down, the rectum coming from the back into
goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yep. And like it sounds really scary, and it can be really scary because there are women who like they can see something coming out.
It'd be terrifying.
Absolutely. But again, it's not uncommon. There's a large proportion of women who have this happen.
And I guess where I'm again projecting myself is it's so terrifying to me because I didn't know that was a possibility. I feel like if I knew that was a possibility, it's just like, it's just like hemorrhoids, right? If you feel a hemorrhoid and you feel like, but if you don't know about it, it is terrifying, right? Like just
anything down there, like if something's wrong.
But at least
people freak out.
But I bet you there's going to be a million people that can connect with this. But of having that when you first get a hemorrhoid and you find out what it is and that it's fine, you're not dying, you're not falling out of yourself, you're okay, is that great feeling, right? But imagine if you didn't have to have that, you could just know before, this is just normal. But that I'm sure that subject, because I had never heard of that and all those things, right? I've never even heard the term vaginal vault in my life, right? Like that,
right.
But I'm imagining all these young, like that should be taught in. You're finding this out now. What if that would have happened to you at 16 before you'd gone through all these courses and you have all this knowledge, right? Imagine, it'd be terrifying. Yep. Who do you go to ask, right? What can we do to try and spread this knowledge to people so that they don't have to go through that, right? And they have more understanding of it, right? And I don't know if that's part of just a male-dominated society of just be quiet with your women issues, right? We don't want to hear about. I'm sure I would imagine that has a huge bit to do with it, but that's got to change, right? With all the, you're seeing all these great movements forwards for women in the past, every year, right? There's always moving forward, but you see these issues that we don't even know are issues, right? And haven't even been brought up into the forefront, right? You always hear, and that's I think a typical response. Maybe it's more so living in northern Alberta like we do. Maybe it's a bit more less understanding there, but it seems like it just needs to be more widespread. I don't know how to do that or what kind of form that needs to take, but it just seems like obvious to me that every girl should know that, right? Just to be able to act and know their body, right? The connection, it's just overall our connections with our bodies has diminished to nothing over the last 20 years. We've gotten so far, we've got all this technology and stuff, but our real in touch, and that goes back to when you're saying of teaching women how to push, because you're asking them to do things with muscles they don't even are there. Like when you're talking about all these inside core muscles, they don't even know they're there. They don't know how to activate one over the other, right? You have to train them and show them where they are, and like you say, maybe do something and show them when they're activating it, and they go, I think am I activating it? No. And you're there to actually, okay, now you're activating those muscles. That way you need, and then they can practice that. So when their doctor says to them, okay, push, now hopefully the husband too, or the partner too, would be there, whoever's going to be there with you would go to those meetings too, so they know, and they can help remind you of where to push in those things, right? You can give little mnemonic devices to help remember what you're supposed to be doing, stay in that mindset, right? I just think it would be so much, but yeah, it just, you don't even get there because nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if you think about just like not knowing, and like a lot of women go in and they go into the hospital and they just give their body over
to the medical system,
because
right?
they're like,
they
medical
know,
system, keep me safe, keep my baby safe, or
and
keep my baby safe and then keep me safe.
And I think what a big, not to interrupt you again, but I feel like having a baby isn't gated by any sort of intelligence or knowledge of the process
or training.
Exactly. So you think about someone like me or you, right? You, in actually, if you ever did have a child, or me, just trying to put myself in that spot intellectually of where we're at, of what we think, we would do all that work, right? We would know that. But imagine if you if you live somewhere, you only got your grade 8 education or grade 10, whatever it is, you dropped out, you don't have you never took bio in your life, you don't even know, like, past the skin, you don't know what anything is, you couldn't name an organ in your body, and you go into that situation, you have to give yourself over, right? Because there's no education to give that, right? All they're taught is, you don't need to know this, they'll figure it out, right? You are instructed from a small child to do exactly what you said. Yeah, trust the doctor, give yourself over, right? But then when you say things like, when you told me about that whole, I'm still stuck on that whole pushing thing, and the way you're pushing is actually making it harder, right? You're closing that between that bowl and nose bone, like you said, between what was the bowl in that situation?
So basically, like with the pelvic floor, it goes from your pubic bones, like that, like that's like the part where your hips come together at the front.
Like if you're pushing from the side, like when the baby's head's trying to come out, that's what's like pushing on the top. Like if you were just looking at the side, and on the bottom, it's the tailbone, right? So that's the two places you're trying. But when you are pushing, like you're pooping, right? You're squeezing that or something. You told me.
So basically, like if you're laying on your back, like the baby has to get through between that area. So first of all, like if you're laying on your back, which is the most common position to birth in, if you've watched any movie that has birth in it, you see the woman on her back with her legs in stirrups. So I think that people think that's the only position you can birth in. But that's not necessarily the case. And there's a couple different positions that you can discuss, like with your pelvic health physio, your midwife, your doctors, depending on the team that you're using, to discuss the benefits of the different positions.
But just in that one, I remember you saying that really...
Yes. So I'm getting there. So basically, like, and especially when you're scared, you think about like when you get scared, your muscles tend to tighten up. And then think about all of a sudden you've got this pain that you've never felt. Like your muscles, if you don't know to breathe into it and to relax, so the pelvic floor muscles have to expand and dilate so that the baby can exit. So those muscles, those ones, it's really important to teach women to relax.
That's what you're saying. So when they just get told to push, right? They tense all those muscles up, and they're trying.
Yeah, and tense everything
to push
up
past that, and that's what causes. There's going to be right. There can be damage and tearing and stuff.
There can be damage no matter what.
We don't want to say that that's what's causing it. It's that you're doing anything wrong, because you're not. It's just maybe there's ways where you could teach them to push with these upper core muscles, right? Where you think
so more the transverse abdominis, so that one that wraps like a corset.
Exactly.
So ideally you want to be pushing that way, but you don't want to be closing off that system. So you want that system to be open at the bottom, to be pushing from the top down, and not to be pushing, or to be like, so like you feel this pressure, you feel this pain at this area, and you're trying to push with those muscles in quotation, but a lot of women tend to tighten up.
Exactly, because that's your normal instinct, right? If you've never really pushed, that's you clench, right? And that's what it was. But that was so obvious to me, because I thought, like, trying to put myself in that position. If you waved a magic wand and I was 9 months pregnant walking in the hospital tomorrow, I would just, I would be doing the same thing, and I wouldn't have that knowledge. And I just feel so upset. Like, I'd feel so bad. I just feel so strongly with those women of going in there, not set up to fail, but like just not
having that
extra knowledge, and that's nothing
that could make it
annoys me more than not having the full knowledge of something, or not giving it the full thought, so you're making accurate decisions, right? You need all the inputs to make a good output.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's you see that everywhere, and that's what is making me so mad with everything going on right now with all the COVID and stuff, right? I just want all the inputs to be looked at so we can find the right output, right? That doesn't mean that if you think opening things up is, you're not a bad person, right? If you think keeping everything closed, right, you just want to be safe, right? These are all things, but we just have to be free to have this discussion about those, right? There's all these different aspects, there's all the different inputs, right? Domestic violence, I'm sure you've heard all these little things that they're spouting, but you shouldn't be looked at as, if you want to look at all these inputs, you're a bad person, you just are off on the other side of it, right? You just got to look at all the inputs, whether it is, right, when it's on a grand scale like that of all these human lives at stake, or a pregnancy, or all these things, right? It just gets to me of, okay, we have to look at all these inputs. We have to look at the full story. And when people try and close down or put barriers up, like, oh, if you want to look, if you don't agree with the standard of what the government says, and that's what you follow, or I guess if you're trying to put it to later, if you don't follow the doctor's directions, what they say, that's go. You can't put different, you don't even bring up different positions, you don't bring up the pre and post and all these things, you just follow the doctors, they know what they're doing. And if you think anything other than that, you're a hippie, right? You're that Quaker Oats lady that wants to come in and do it her way. But we need to at least,
I think we need to give that control back to women, though.
Exactly.
Because I think that women need to know that, like, their body is built for this, and they do know more. They know their body. And obviously the doctors only want the safest thing for their baby and for them. They're not but they're doing what's most comfortable for them. And if anything goes wrong, they want you in that position that they can do
emergency C-section,
like anything that they need to do. Like, that's the position that is easiest for them.
It's already,
Absolutely. But if you look at like how many people actually have complications that require that, it's not as high as like having every single person in that position. So I think that like having a good birth team and having a good relationship with that doctor, and that's obviously going to change over the course of time, as well as more evidence comes out about these things and more women are empowered to even have these discussions. Like, maybe you have these discussions and your doctor explains why they want to do everything that they are doing, and then you're like, I'm so on board. But then you understand why everything is being done, and you have that knowledge. And like, when they hook you up to the monitor, it's not that something's going wrong. It's just that this is what we do with all of them.
And you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I'm saying about inputs and outputs. I didn't say it but even if it doesn't change the output or the decision you made at all, that's something I see with work all the time, right? When they talk about, well, should we price this at $10 or $9, right, to sell? I don't care if you price it at $10 or $9. Let's just make sure we looked at every angle and we're doing it with an educated way, and we've looked at everything, even if that doesn't change, right, what we actually did. You need to look at everything, because nothing makes me more upset than an uneducated decision, right? Not a bad decision. Decision can be good or bad, right? Because if you took the time to look at all the inputs and you checked all those things, if it turned out to be a bad decision, oh well, you looked at everything, you made that best.
It was the best choice you made with the information you had.
And I think that's where I find myself just always. I think one of my strongest skills is that if you give me all the inputs, I'm very good. Just the way my brain works, I've always been very logical, and that's where I excel. Is if you give me all the inputs, I can give you a really good answer, and that's why I get so upset if there's missing pieces. Or on the flip side of that, when people say you can't look at all the options, right? I've been losing my mind the last couple of weeks, because every time you hear somebody bring up the fact of there's other factors to this COVID crisis that are hurting people's lives, right? Economic, you see all that, but just to see people attack. When you're just trying to open the conversation of, well, let's just look at it from every angle and have this conversation, you get labeled and attacked as all these things, right? Or the other way, right? People around our hometown, if you talk about, no, we got to take this slow and be, oh, you're a hippie and you're a liberal, whatever. It's just everyone just, no, we're all in the same. We all want the same outcome. Let's just look at everything. But either when you withhold inputs so that you're not allowing people to make good decisions, or if you're trying to silence people from just doing that and not towing your line of what you think is right, nothing makes me more angry, right? And I think, and I think more so when you look at this, what the conversation we've been having, it's more so on the one side of, it's just uneducated. It's not people trying to hold you back. Well, do you think there is any cases of what I just discussed, maybe with doctors that have been doing it for 40 years, delivering babies, and you come in with this knowledge of, hey, I want to do this. Like, I know that this, but I want to make this small change to do that. And they say, well, I know what I'm doing. I've been a doctor. Do you think that is something that struggles against too?
I can't speak to that personally, because I haven't been in the situation myself, and I haven't had anybody tell me that yet.
I would just imagine that would be something.
I can't imagine, like, that's not something that seems far off to me. And I think that just is really unfortunate because I think of all the times in a woman's life where she should feel in control and like she understands what's going on and like and that she's in her power is when she's doing one of the most powerful things any human being will do in their life.
And just to take it right back to the start of our conversation, when you said that mental health aspect of pregnancy not going the way you planned it and the way you did, can you imagine having this all planned out and just having a doctor come in and say, no, that's not what we're doing, that's unsafe, we're just doing this, and bulldoze you over? And lots of times you don't have time, right? If you're walking into that, it's the baby's
and if something's
coming, right?
going,
and you can't, you're always taught just to give yourself over to that doctor and have that. Just have him Jesus take the wheel at that moment, right? You're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
But can you imagine the guilt that probably some women feel because, not to take it back to that, but a lot of life you've been told to, if a man talks to you, you take what they said, right? Like, I know you know all about that, right? You grew up in a pretty, male dominated world up in the oil field, Northern Alberta, right? I got to watch you grow past that and become a strong woman, right? And I feel like that's where I get a lot of my, appreciation for women and why I can have these conversations. And I think when I started listening to those podcasts, I think that was when I was like, why do I enjoy it so much? I think it is because I have so much respect for women because I got to see like what you did in Strong Women, right? When people say women aren't funny or women can't do this, it's like, oh no, they can, right? But then also I think I get nipped in the butt sometimes too because I have high expectations too, right? It's like I've seen, and mainly you, because you're probably the most inspirational woman that I've seen in my life, but because I really enjoy how you do things, just the way you live your life, that when girls try to hide behind some things, I don't have time for that. It's like, no, you can't play that game both sides. I know what women are capable of. I've had great examples of strong women, but then you think of how many people don't, right? You just don't have, if you don't have that strong woman in your life and you don't be able to get there, right? That's kind of a tangent. I don't know where I was going with that, but you know what I mean? But it's just so unfortunate to watch that. Oh yeah. With doctors. Cause I can just imagine like some of the doctors I met, and you'd hope in the labor field or whatever you'd call it, it'd be less like this, but they can be not the nicest people. They can be a little gruff, right? Especially if you get to a certain age and you've been doing it for a long time, you don't want to hear nothing, especially nowadays. Can you imagine being a doctor these days when with social media, everyone with WebMD coming in telling you all these things, right? But where you had said, you nailed it on the head earlier saying, but that all holds true, right? And I'm sure that's annoying that you deal with it, but this is one realm where it is pregnancy. It is that woman. This is a transformative moment for that one. It's not just a medical procedure. It's way more than that, right? And
it's so much more.
This is so important. You have to take that power away, and you have to check that at the door, all these things, right? Maybe you were annoyed for the last 5 hours of people bringing in, telling them, I'm sure I have COVID, right? I have this and this, right? I have it on my phone, this is the thing. But when you step into that arena in pregnancy, you have to take that down. I know it's probably hard as hell to do because it's just so annoying, but you have to do that, and you have to give them a little bit of leeway, or just at least have the give a little bit of room, right? And maybe it's
acknowledging where they're at.
Where you're coming from. I have read that study, or I'll take a look at that. But I think that this would be better. Let's have just make it a discussion. Don't shut it down, because I would imagine I would imagine there's a million evidence cases that you could talk to of women that said, yeah, no, I had this whole plan out of what I want to do with my pregnancy. This is my thing, and the doctor kiboshed it, and we just went in. I went in all right, or you hear stories of what you do here is being pressured to take when women go in wanting to do a natural birth and being pressured into taking drugs because it's easier for a doctor. I've heard personal stories of people doing that, right? It's all in that same vein of them just wanting what's best for them, but you have to, in that one particular arena, you have to give that power back, right? Or at least share it.
Well, I think I would, right? And obviously this is an area that I feel very passionate about, but I also think that you could argue that in all aspects of health.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's a balance, because you do have social media and you do have people who are accessing the internet, but you have to recognize that health is something, health is the most important thing in our life. And if somebody's scared for some reason, you need to be okay, so you've come to see me 3 times with you thought you had X, Y, and Z. We did the test. You don't have that, but why? What are you so where is this coming from? Yeah. Because maybe they're dealing with something else, or maybe they have a family history of these things and they're so scared.
They have an anxiety disorder that's manifesting in something, right?
Exactly. There's so many other things, and it just does people such a disservice to completely shut that down and just be oh, this person is annoying. They come see me, they come see me 5 times a year with these random things that come off the internet, or somebody is just lonely.
Exactly. Oh, that is huge, right? These people that just want to talk to someone. I know that better than anyone was when I worked in the convenience store of Dad's at a young age, right? And I would tell Dad, like, man, these guys, they come in and talk to you for an hour. And he goes, yeah, they sit in a truck for 14 hours. They just want someone to talk to, right? If you'll engage them and give them that, they'll sit there for as long as they can because they just want that human connection. And is that not evidenced more than ever right now?
I was going to say
I remember at the start of this, before I was able to come kind of just see our immediate family like we're allowed to now, right? And just, keeping to the restrictions as best we can, but we'll see our immediate family because we're all doing the right things. But before that, I got a call from a salesman or just wanted to talk about pumps or something. And we talked for an hour on boxing and MMA. Like we just connected on that. And you could tell both of us hadn't really talked to anybody in a while. And And it was a really good conversation, in depth, you just kind of, you're craving that so much, that connection, that you just jump into it. Right. And I think that's definitely something that happens with doctors, but I imagine you see that a lot, and it's easy to get jaded against that even too, where I know you're fine. You just want to talk to me. You just want something, you want something to complain to.
But that's also a very dangerous pattern to fall into, because what if
you think
on the one time it is something.
What I'm saying, and that's where I think you're right. It's not just like you have to, have it all. To me, it all comes back down to some compassion, right? And I think the medical field and how it's set up. I mean, even like you say, you can blow it past that. Is every job you do it for a while. The complacency breeds the lack of compassion. I said that very wordily, but you know what I mean? Like if you're a doctor for 40 years, that compassion was probably a lot higher at the start than it is at the end.
Well, like it's very well studied now, compassion fatigue.
There you go, right? I knew there'd be a word for it. I just was fumbling around with my grade 2 dictionary there to say it, right? Compassion fatigue, for sure, in the medical field especially, but in any field, right? You see that when you have the old bookkeeper that's been doing it for 40 years and snaps at everyone, but does a hell of a job, but nobody really wants to go there because they've seen it all. They don't want to be annoyed by you filed this paper wrong. They've seen it all, right? Same with the medical field, but like you say with the labor is a domain where you have to get that power back. Just medicine as a domain, like you say, is a compassionate field, and you need to have that, right?
But I think there also needs to be support for healthcare workers.
Thank you.
And like there is some things like I know like they talked about it a bit in our program, and we had different supports set up, whether they were what we needed or not. And then I know like my partner works with AHS, and they've got mental health support not only for them but also for their spouses. Right. And so like for my situation, having my spouse in the hospital and having a condition where I take immunosuppressant medication, and so we can't live together right now. It was tough. For sure. And he asked me if I wanted to reach out and access this
mental health
resource.
There you go.
And like at this point I haven't, but like it's hard because like I probably could have used it. For sure. But for whatever reason, even though like we've grown up with a psychologist for a mom, we know the value of it. Right. It's difficult to do it, and I just wish that there was more. One that is normalized, that there was more to it, and that like there was different ways to access it. Right. So like somebody might not be comfortable, like it, like for him to be like, oh, I think like you reach out to this phone number. I was like, I don't feel like that's something that I want to do at this point, like for whatever reason. And maybe if he'd be like, oh, you just email this person, or like there's like avenues, different ways.
Just like everyone learns differently, everyone reaches out differently.
Exactly.
Right? It's the same
exactly.
thing.
Like for me to be like, oh, like I'm XYZ's like fiance,
which is why I think it's such a like a tool like BetterHelp, where like you get assigned a therapist and you can call them, you can do like video chats, you can text, you can do those, right? So it gives all those people whatever you want to do. You can connect with them on whatever's comfortable with you. And then if you maybe you're a person that would benefit from actually talking face to face with them, or computer, right, like Skype or whatever, but you're not comfortable with that right away. But if you can build a rapport by texting, right, like you said, you just got to give that modality to give people that comfortability to do it. But just something that popped in my head when you said that was, and this is definitely a pipe dream, but it'd be nice if they could start researching things that would help rebuild that compassion. I think you start with the medical field, but you could probably take this theory out to other ones. But if you found almost like what I'm envisioning is, you say every 10 years in the medical field, you have to go on this retreat, right? And they do compassion things, try and find your love of what got you into that, right? And I'm sure if you did it over the years, you would build and like everything, like this podcast.
I think it should be yearly.
Well, yearly or whatever. I'm just using numbers to throw it off. More so the spirit of the program is just to reignite that what you have, because that's what you lose, right? And I remember being blown away when I went to university and seeing the nurses there. I remember one nurse in particular that lived on my floor. She would come home and tell me stories about cleaning up shit off people and just like all these, and she's smiling and loving, and it's just, you see this, just the fire that burns within them to help people in that. And it's so amazing. Like, it just floored me just to see that people just have that in them. Because I would love to say I have that in me, but I know I don't. I would be that doctor. If I was that doctor, I'd be the one throwing that guy's phone that was trying to show me WebMD for the 4th time today, throwing that out the window, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So these people are or aren't very common, right? These people that have that calling.
Yeah.
We should be supporting it. How can we stop that? Because you see it,
And when you have that person taking care of you, that is what you remember,
goodness, right? Even when I still think of the nurses that were around when Pups was in his final days there, and how good they were to us, right? That still sticks with me. That was years ago, and that sticks with me, right? And it's such a huge part of it, right? Like medical field, R&D, all these things, new developments, that's so important. But I think we're missing one of those, the key pillars there is that compassion fatigue, right? And you see, you can almost, maybe it's not a scientific study, but you can kind of look on a ward and see, the real, and this has outliers for sure, but you see these younger coming in with full of piss and vinegar with that attitude, and they have this compassion. And you look at some of the older staff, if you're going to find the curmudgeon nurse on that ward, odds are it's going to be one of the older ones that had done it for a while, but they probably started off with that fire, that the same one that these young, they just wanted to help people, right? They hadn't been beaten down by that system to get them to that point. But if you could find something, right, you say once a year, once every 5 years, and just research what it is that will get them to that point to try and reinvigorate them, and just make it mandatory, right? Just like you have to retake your first aid every couple of years, right? You have to retake your eyesight test to get your license back, right? You have to do all these things, just a basic of, it's part of your job, right? Like the way I would love to see a connection with a pelvic health therapist be connected to OBGYN. I would love some sort of compassion fatigue program to be just necessary, right? You just don't make it an option, because then it's easy. As soon as it's an option, it's so easy not to do it, right? But
absolutely. But like, think about so I'm very aware of this because the field I work in, but healthcare cuts happen every cycle. And so there's just like, and it's funny because until you're sick, you like, it's no skin off your back. And then like when I had my placements in the hospital, and when I talk to my friends who work in the hospital, like people are angry because they didn't see their physio on a day. And it's like, well, we've got so many people and we are doing our best to see everybody, but there's only so many of us. And it's same with the nurses, like, oh, it took you 10 minutes to like answer my call bell. And it's like, well, maybe they were performing CPR on the person beside.
Right.
And they're working a double because somebody called in sick, and like they haven't been home in 2 days.
You always hear like the residency stories of these young doctors going through what they go through, and it's just mind blowing, right? And to imagine,
and they're sacrificing so much. And then like it just like the cuts come. There's fewer positions, more people are being spread thinner, and like obviously like that's when things get left longer. Like obviously there's more potential for mistakes to be made, which is like of all the fields. Health is not one where you want to increase that.
The cracks and it could be the difference between life and death, right?
And then like I think about like one of my best friends is a nurse, and then my partner is a physio in an acute care hospital, and I think about like what they're going through, and how like for my partner and I, we can't live together, and so that's obviously difficult. But then like for him, before we decided to live apart, he came home worried every day that he was going to make me sick.
Decided?
Huh? Well, yeah.
I feel like we kind of forced your hand a little bit too, right?
No, but like it was a decision that we made with the help of our doctor.
Exactly. And
our doctor recommended it, and then
a rock star who stepped in.
Yeah, we are so lucky with her. We're so lucky.
We're very lucky. But the fact that she understood what a tough time that would be, right, for you guys to have to make that decision of should you, right, because you are immunocompromised, and it would be we need to keep you safe away from that virus, right? It's not like if I got it and you got it, it'd be a much different story, right, because of the medication you're on for your Oscar Mayer-Wiener syndrome or whatever it's called. I can't remember, but
which is also a very weird position to be in.
Exactly. But I just love I was just over the moon when I heard that. So what had happened was you guys were going through trying to decide whether you guys were going to still live together, right? Liam was working, or your partner was working in. I'm sure he'll be on this podcast soon enough, so people will get to know him. I haven't asked him yet, but I'll ask him tonight or tomorrow. Anywho, when you guys had to make that decision, when everything, and there was so much unknown and we didn't know what it was, and there was at times where they're saying it was attacking your immune system, so if you were on immunosuppressants, it could be a good thing, right? There was so much disinformation at the start, and you guys were forced into trying to make this decision with, things were changed by the hour, and it was so hard, and you guys don't want to be a part. We pull back to cover. You guys are also planning a wedding. You were supposed to get married this summer. I know that's a tough spot, and that's unfortunate, but that's, everyone's sacrifice and stuff, you guys more than others, but all that, and for her to understand of they're going through all this, they're going to want nothing more than to be together through this, right? And that's so hard for them to have to make that decision. I'm just going to step in and say, you know what? It's out of your hands. I'm telling you as your doctor, you guys have to live apart. And I thought that was one of the coolest, most amazing things, right? And we already knew she was a rock star, but just to see that, I just thought that was amazing, and like, I wish.
And she is so special.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what,
if every doctor was like that, the
and
world
that's
would be
if
incredible.
every nurse, if every doctor, but I think what I got to see when I went to Lister, and I got to see the young crops, it was almost to a letter, they all had that same fire, right? In that same, but I think you lose it. And I think it's those outliers, because when I hated making that point earlier about the Comerageny ones being the older ones, because I know I've met so many older nurses that are still the sweetest pie, like the nicest ladies, right? So there are outliers, but I think it's a balance of that resiliency that you have internally and what kind of things you deal with throughout your medical career that get you to that point. But there are those people that now, not only do they keep that compassion, but now they have 40 years of experience, and there's a lot of difference between talking to a 27-year-old doctor and a 50-some-year-old doctor that has been around the block, knows the interpersonal, right? Has been married, has been apart from people, have to stay apart, and knows that pain, and can put that all together with that compassion to make that call, right? That's if that was any other doctor, if that was just your walk-in clinic doctor that was assigned to you, that's never going to make that call. But imagine
and I don't think I would have trusted it from that person who didn't know.
That's just so amazing. I got a little emotional. You probably see just trying to tell that story, right? Because it means a lot to me, and I was really stressed out at that time talking about it, because I was so worried about you guys, right? And I didn't want, especially because things are changing that quick, and we've learned a lot, and the death rate isn't what it was, but at that time it was scary, right? Because nobody knew what was going on, and I was scared for you guys. I wanted you guys to be a part, and I was with my logical brain, seemed to me like there wasn't an option. You guys had to be a part as soon as possible, and I felt that, and I wasn't maybe as sensitive about it as I could have been, but it was because I was so passionate about making sure that you were safe that it came across a little bit. Maybe I could have been a little softer with it, right, of making my position heard, but I felt like I was the only one, because our parents don't want to make that force out hand, right, and make that call, right, because it's personal to you, and that's not their place, right? That was a decision you want to be made. But in my head, it wasn't a decision. It, like the way I see it with my logical brain, that wasn't a decision to be made. There was one right call. I had all the inputs, right, and when it becomes a matter of life and death like that with someone I love, there's no inputs, there's no outputs. It's you do what's safe, right? No ifs, ands, or buts. And to see someone recognize what we were all going through and that internal strife that creates between our family, right? She probably didn't know that. She didn't know the conversations we were having, but she's smart enough. She's been around them, but she had that compassion to understand that and to step in and calm that. And that was so nice. And it's easy for me to say on this side, I'm not the one going through it, and you're the one that has to be alone during this scary time, and be away from your partner, right? And had to push your wedding, like just the emotional roller coaster that you've been forced through, right? Just such a big transition. So it's easy for me to say, but then to watch you go through that, but it's just been it's been a roller coaster. But I just can't imagine if we didn't have somebody like that within our that's just one example. If she's been doing stuff like that for us, and I 100%. And that's the nice thing about growing up in a small town of 4,000 people. You get to know your doctor like that. But I just can't imagine. And I'm we're so spoiled of having that all our lives that
I know
that I can't imagine these people that don't have that connection, right, and can't do that, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it just blows my mind. But that's probably 95% of people, right? They don't have a personal connection with their medical system or medical person, whoever that is, right? It just blows my mind, and just the different care that you can get, right? Yeah, right.
Absolutely. But like, to bring that back to the original point, it's like, so obviously for Liam and I, we've had to make some sacrifices, and it's been hard. And it's like incredible to watch him to do what he does, because it's very, very selfless.
Yeah, no, and that's and I've been very impressed with that too, of that that drive to go in there every day. Just to tell people, I'll probably have Liam on at some point in the future, but he is working on the actual COVID unit at the hospital that he works at right now, and that's why we had to make that call, right, to separate you and him, because it just wasn't safe, right? They're taking all the precautions, they have the right PPE, they're doing everything right, but for Liam to because if we're completely honest, really, if we wanted to, there was another option of Liam just, things are crazy right now, I'm just going to take a step back and just quitting his job, right? And that's not a lot of option. There's not a lot of people that have that option. We're extremely lucky that we would have even had that option, right? That's just the roll of the dice that we got. But for him to know that and still go back and say, no, I'm not quitting. This is, somebody needs to do it. It is a really important thing. And I think you can speak to the actual role. I didn't realize this at first either, but for because this is a respiratory disease, lung physiotherapy is actually a huge part of getting these people healthy and keeping their lungs right. They're saying like Michael Yo was on a podcast and he came down with COVID. He was in New York and he almost died. He said his doctor said they tried to put him on a ventilator and the doctor said, if we put you on a ventilator right now, your body's going to see that it doesn't have to work anymore. It's going to give up and you're going to die. You have to keep fighting. You have to keep doing that. And what that rang in my head, running back to that conversation with you, is, oh yeah, completely. And then on the flip side of that, you can swing that pendulum the other way. And not only are you not going to put a respirator on and fight for it, but you can have somebody that specializes in the physiotherapy of gaining back lung strength, doing all those exercises, right? And showing these people, right? It's a hugely important role that most people don't even know. They don't know that, and there has been a really big push for frontline workers. We shouldn't pretend that there hasn't been, right? All over the world that you've seen people supporting them. But there's all these little things that you don't get to see the actual stories of someone, being a part at a time like this. Not only and maybe not everyone is in that same situation where, not only are they forced to go in off the front lines, because he's a physiotherapist, really. When you become a doctor, you're
signing up for the medical.
What is the thing you take? You sign or it's like a speech, not Miranda rights. That's the police one.
I know what you're talking about.
The moral code of doctors. See, this is why
I want to say Socrates' oath, and it's not Hippocratic.
Bingo. See, this is why we just got to grow this podcast to the point where we got a little producer that can look shit up for us. A little Jamie.
Yeah.
Throw that up on the screen for us. But yeah, no, exactly that, right? You take that oath, but he didn't really have to. I mean, you probably have some sort of similar, right? You're still doing good for the people, but for him to take that on himself and realize that this was necessary and people need this right now, and to go in there, I found that hugely impressive, right? I thought that was spectacular, and that's why I want to have him on, have that discussion with him once it's safe to do so. Or I'll have to figure out how to do this online because it's already hard enough to set this up in person. Oh my God, it took me all morning. But just to see that, it's just, so impressive. And one of the things I was hearing, I've already told you this, but just for anybody listening, it was a doctor talking about right when everything was closing down, and they were talking about the message that this sends to med students, especially. He said, it's great. We don't know what's going on. We have to close things down. That's smart, except the medical schools. You have to keep those open. You can't teach these young doctors that are coming up that when things get hard, you go turn tail and run, right? And that just resonated with me so deeply, like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that, right? But he said, no, you don't, you double down, you put the course load on double, you get them back into the field where they need to be. And if they don't want to be, don't be a doctor, right? And he was a doctor speaking from that point of view, but I hadn't even thought about it, right? And then you think of those students, and then you think of someone like Liam, who when he signed up to be a physiotherapist, never in a million years was this in the books, right? And for a doctor, for the most part, a pandemic isn't something you really count on being in the books, but it's an option, right? It's within that realm of possibility. It's in the medical field, right? We've had them before,
and you're going to be exposed to people who are sick.
You know what you're getting into. Physiotherapy is not, and for him to then take that step, right? It's like an extra. He's impressive. You got a good one. I approve.
Yeah. But I think that it's so important to recognize, so obviously our story is a little convoluted, but with everything that's going on. Right. But when I talked to him, there are so many of his colleagues who had to reschedule weddings too. There are so many of his colleagues who are feeling scared because they don't have the option to, we're lucky that I got to move in with my parents, so that we could comfortably live apart. But they're scared because they're coming home every day and they're changing at work. They're doffing all of their clothes at the door. They're getting right into the shower, but then they've got young kids at home and they are so scared that they're getting their, maybe they're asymptomatic, but they're getting their family sick.
Putting them at risk, and that's
absolutely there's so many sacrifices that they're making, and I hope that even as the restrictions are lifting, which I'm excited about, I'm so excited that I got to go back to work. It was such a mood lift to be able to go back, have a little bit of routine, see my patients who were really desperate for some hands-on treatment, because there were a few who were really suffering with not being able to come in. Like it was so awesome, but I do hope that
just to, I'm sure people will wonder if we don't talk about what practices you guys put in place to allow you to go back to work.
Oh yeah. So we wear masks all day. There's only 2 physios in the clinic at a time. We are taking only 1 patient each during a time block. We've extended our time blocks so that they're longer, so there's no overlap between
so they
our
call
patients.
it alternate. You bring in a patient, then they bring in a patient, then you,
And we have longer blocks.
Right, so that you don't have to rush them out if it's getting close. You got a little more.
Absolutely, because normally we like to see our patients, like we do our treatment and then we get them to do their exercises so that we can keep an eye on them, and maybe we will start. Like I've got a couple patients who they like to take their time. Right. They don't have a exercise bike at home.
Exactly.
So like, oh, can I just ride the exercise bike for 20 minutes at the end, like to get a little cardio in? I'm never gonna say no to that. Well, right now I will, but so we just made our times longer so that we can do everything that we need to do. But anything that they can do at home, they get the homework, we review it, make sure they're doing it safe, and then they go home. Right. And as soon as they come in, they hand sanitize, they get a mask, they go wash their hands, and then they go to their treatment room. Right. And obviously, like we've got super strict hand washing protocols, and all of our equipment is sanitized as soon as it's touched. Our poor office admins are following people basically with
wipes and disinfectant. Yep. Well, that's perfect.
Like literally, somebody walks in the door, like the handle gets wiped, the counter gets wiped, even if they didn't like stand at the counter. Like it's very, very serious. Yeah. But it's nice, like as somebody who is immunocompromised, like I feel safe.
And that's exactly it. And if you
and they said the patients get a mask too. Like we got a mask, patients have a
mask.
Everyone's
masked up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Huh. Well, yeah, and that's the nail on the head right there. You know, if you feel comfortable as an immunocompromised person, then should kind of be the guiding light for some other people too, right? And it's it's funny for me the whole time to be keeping on working as an essential worker, and you're doing stuff like that where it seems like it'd be more essential. You know, like physiotherapy seems more essential, but
yeah. And there were some people who were really like hard up to come back in, and they were saying the same thing. They're like, how are you not essential? How are you not able
100%.
to be open? And like we weren't able to give them any answers for that. But at the same time, like it really opened up a massive opportunity for us to get like used to virtual treatments, because it was awesome. I've got patients who love it.
Exactly.
They're
and just like earlier when we were talking about mental health resources, having it multiple different, because everyone's different. Everyone does things differently, right? Someone will really connect with virtual. Some people are just, they don't like human contact. It scares them, right? That whatever
100%.
Past
or
traumas
just like,
or whatever they have, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, especially with some of that stuff, especially physical touch.
Or they live out of town and they don't have access to a physio in their town.
Or you live in
or it's their cousin, or like they've got like weird relationships like in a small town. Or there's like a massive wait list.
Yeah, exactly. You can't get in, right? No, that's...
Or they just don't want to put pants on.
Whatever the reason, it's all good. You know?
Exactly. And like for physio, obviously like it's a different kind of assessment when you can't put your hands on somebody. But like it was so successful.
And like you said, we've talked about this a little bit, but the combination of the two, right? Because you do need, you've done lots of physio on me since you've kind of got your accreditation. Just I hurt myself all the time, right? And you help me out. And I was always surprised by how much hands-on it is, and testing ranges and having me push against force and seeing how much force I can exude. It's very much done by feel, right? A lot more than I thought it would be. And I think that makes it so that virtual isn't the solution for it's not, but I think to be able to do that.
But for a large proportion of people, it can be.
And then but to mix it, right? Maybe you can do the first assessment online, so you can kind of get to know the person, have that little back and forth, build that relationship, show me where the pain is, how high you can do the things, like get everything you can till the point where you actually need to be physically in contact with them. Then bring them in. Now you're not wasting their time, right? Maybe the first time you bring them in, you're doing all this stuff you could have done online beforehand.
And there's so many people who are like, I don't have any issues. I want to live a pain-free life, and like I'm starting to run. I want to get into CrossFit eventually. Like I just want to like make sure that everything is in a good place before I get into it. Or like my posture is really bad. Like I have so many people who come in and they're like, I don't have neck pain, but I know that like it can cause neck pain. I just want to work on.
Really?
increase. Like there's so many things that like,
I didn't realize that people came in like for kind of preemptive stuff. I always thought it was
and I think that we're lucky again at
right.
Optimize.
You have that, yeah, and you can kind of help, and that probably helps keep it a little fresh for you, because you're not only just dealing with injuries, you're helping people, pick.
I love
pick
preventative
goals.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Pick goals in it, and that's why I was kind of leading you onto that, because I knew you like that just because I grew up with you. But that really rings your bell and is what you need. But yeah, just going back to that with so many different things, it's so funny to see. A couple years ago, I don't remember if you remember this, but I remember seeing that big wave of different learning, right? Like there's different learners, and that was this huge wave of people, just this revolution of some kids learn by visually, some kids learn, and that's, holy man, this was this huge change. And that's with everything. It applies to everything, and how we are still so blind to it. And it seems, it's so clear over here that every child learns differently, but it's so foreign to us to think that people would need mental health resources differently, or their physio differently, or their anything, right? It's just it's so mind blowing, their news differently, right? Like all these things, everyone is so biodiverse, and we just still can't wrap our head around it. I don't know what it is, but for someone like myself, that, like I say, I have a weird ass brain. I think of things very odd. When I try and break down the way I'm thinking of things, to you or other people, it usually comes out not as normal as other people. But to me, it just seems so obvious. Like everyone's different. Why are we dancing around this, pretending it's not, right? Like, why can't we just agree? Okay, this is obvious. Why are we messing around here? Like, let's diversify. And I know that but once you can establish that, I know there's barriers that will prevent you from making all that happen, right? There's economic barriers, like you say, funding, all those things can happen. But like I said, I'd at least know what we're trying to get to, so that we can make a smart decision. Okay, we know this would be the best way to do it, but we don't have the money. Okay, we don't have the money, right? Like I said, doesn't change the output, but we have all the inputs, and we made an educated decision about it. We didn't just like, oh, well, this is kind of the way it works, and yeah, that's the way it is, staying there,
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how are you doing with the being separated? It's been how many weeks now?
6.
Yeah. So how is that going now? Sick of it?
Yeah.
Would you say the hardest part, because again, this is probably me projecting, but I know for myself what would kill me would be, I don't know, there's no date on it. There's no end date.
That is the worst.
And I imagine, and I know you've already heard me say this, but how is it not a rotation, but because you can't, it doesn't make sense to bring different people in and out of that wing, right? That's just not, but can it not be like a 6-week stint? Like you did 6 weeks on the COVID ward. Now somebody else can take a turn so you can go see your family. Like it just seems so nuts to me. And it makes sense for him to do it because he has the know-how and stuff, but it just blows my mind that they can't find something there, like it shouldn't be the option of either you do this or you quit. That's your two options of, like, there should be something else where,
and I think if he had forced that,
and
they would have
right,
been a little bit more
Liam's
flexible.
such a nice guy, I'm sure, and he wanted to do the right thing, and I feel like I devalue what he did by saying these things, and I don't want that to be the way it comes across, because I am amazingly proud of what he did and what he's currently doing, right? He's still doing it. I find it amazing, but I just think if that was me, I'm putting myself in the shoes, I would be kicking up hell to figure it out, right? And me and Liam are very different people, and that's why it takes all kinds and that. But I just can't imagine, even if they could give you a date, or if they could say, we're gonna give you a month off so you can isolate for whatever that it is now, 8 days or whatever, or you've put in your 8 weeks on this COVID ward, May 23rd you're done, and then May 20 and isolate for 5 days. May 28th, we're going to bring a swab to your house, and we're going to swab you and guarantee you're safe. Now you've already isolated, you're guaranteed safe, and you can have 2 weeks of off time. You're not only off that ward, you can just go be with your family, and then you could go back, right? Just to give you guys a little bit of time to reset, because we don't know, this could go forever, right? That's a scary thing, and it obviously it's changing, and it's not what we thought it was, right? It's very clear that, and that's what makes me mad, is there's different numbers. I haven't seen one official new death rate number come out from any official sources, right? You see them online, you can look at your own studies that say that, but nobody wants to talk about it. It just doesn't come out anywhere. But that's a different point. But I just love to see some way that they could make it happen, that people could have a little bit of relief from it, or just a couple, like a furlough, like even people that go to war, they get, you can come back for a couple of weeks, and see your family. It just seems like there's no end date on it, right? And it just,
I know. And that's easily the most difficult part of it. And like, it's funny because he's from Australia. And so we did the long distance thing, like the longest long distance thing for a year.
And you were and I've done that long distance. And once you're done that long distance, you don't want to do it ever again. Now it's like forcing you back into that, right?
And people are like, "Oh, you're probably you're probably really good at it because
that's what you want to
because
hear,
you've already done it." Yeah. And I get it. It's not a comfortable thing for anybody to discuss. Sure. You never know what the right thing to say is. But like, that's definitely easily the most difficult part of it. But like, the way that you're talking about it, you come from like a business,
right? Exactly,
like a private background,
100%.
And in public, like it's
and I struggle.
There's so many different like protocols and regulations, and like normally,
and they're doing the best they can. I know it's easy for us just to say, oh, what are they doing? They don't, but they're under stress and they're trying to figure it out.
And they've had cuts, they've had position cuts. They're trying, like, they're just like, and then people get sick and they have to send them, and it's getting a lot faster. But like, especially at the beginning, they had to just send them get tested. It took 8 days, and then like they weren't sure if that was the right like data anyway. So like, if you have any symptoms, you still have to be off. And so they're just trying to keep their staff at as high of a level as they can, so they don't have room to just let somebody take a vacation.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, and that's so easy for me.
And I mean, like, as selfish as I'd love to be, like, and I think like it's hard because everybody keeps asking me like, why can't they just change it?
I know, and me, I'm the prime example.
And I mean, I wish we could, but like, if it were swapped places, and I were the one who was in the hospital and Liam wasn't, like, I don't think I would be, like, I wouldn't want to be, and it would also be a thing of like, if it's not me, then who is it?
And that's someone else.
Then like, who am I putting in this position?
Exactly what I was gonna say. You know, Liam goes on a vacation, someone else goes in there, and now they have to go home for their family. They can't be away. You know, yeah. But the thing that gets me is now that the actual changes that we've seen, one of the biggest changes is actually the death rate and how much a bad outcome, how determinant it is on prior, what's it called? Like other factors, comorbidities. Like it's if you don't have a comorbidity, it's like so low, right? And the average age is over, I think, the age of like natural death. I think it's like average age of death from COVID is 81, and like the life expectancy is like 79 or whatever. But it just seems like they could do a poll of, okay, what is your situation at home, right? Do you have family that's fully healthy, right? I'd say the difference between having your girlfriend at home who is compromised, and this is very clear that, like if Liam gets it, he'll be fine. Like you can't say that, but odds are 99.87% he's going to be fine if he gets it. Probably would shrug it off. If he did get sick, it might be, but he wouldn't. He has a pretty good chance, right? You, on the other hand, are different, right? But if now you have somebody that is in the same position, say there's another 28-year-old medical field pair that could be in there, but they're both completely healthy. At that point, that should be who go in there, right? And I think it's just, and I know there's so many other things that you can't draw. You can't. I wish you could, but you can't just sit there and look at everybody's situation and find the best ones, right? That's
absolutely. And then it comes back to privacy and stuff, and like, what does work have a right to know?
And you know me, I'm on the whole other side of that. I don't want to, that's my biggest fear out of it, or not my biggest fear out of this, obviously not, but one of my bigger fears is the government overstep, and I've seen that, and I feel like that's another area where if you bring that up, you're a conspiracy, you're automatically labeled a conspiracy theorist or a racist Trump. So if you bring up anything opposite of that, and that's what. I don't like, like I just, I wish we could just have a normal discussion about it. I wish there was just nuance. It's just everyone banging their drum on this side of the spectrum and this side of the spectrum, and or all in the middle. Like everyone I talk to who's reasonable is in the middle. But
and the reasonable people are in the middle,
but the loud people are on the ends, and they scream and berate the middle all the time, and we're all cowering in the middle. If we actually stood up and realized that, people don't actually care, like all this culture and these things of people being loud yelling on Twitter, it's not real. Nobody actually is mad. When you see these people come out and apologize for things that they said, if they didn't, nothing would happen. Nobody was really mad. There's a couple people that got offended for personal reasons because they have it, right? And I don't judge people for being personally offended for things if you have personal reason behind it, right? Say somebody made a joke about, I don't know, mental handicaps, right? And you had a mentally handicapped sister, right? You'd be offended by that on behalf of her because you're and that's totally understandable. But now everybody in the world has all these different things. Everyone has a personal connection to all these things. If you start saying you can't talk about it because it might offend a certain subsection, now why talk about anything, because you can't, right? Like, it just blows my mind that we can't, you can't, and I think that's more, I'm also very much into comedy, and I love that, and that's more in the domain of comedy, but it goes to anything. If you go to what could offend anybody, anything could offend anybody, right?
True. I think that that's a difficult example.
Yeah,
though.
I know that. I know that's
think
a tough
like,
one, right? And I was more so talking about it with comedy, and that's where you always hear comedians like, so now you're walking in to a comedy show. You know, all they're trying to do is make you laugh, right? And they make all these jokes, and you're laughing. It's so funny. Holy shit, I am falling on my chair. And then they say that one joke about that one thing that touches the trigger. What? I can't believe it. What about all those other jokes about A, B, and C that are all, you know, pretty hot button too? But that was fine. But it's because you have that personal connection. But now, if you do that comedy show with in front of enough crowds and enough people, every joke you have is going to have one person in that. So now, if you say, "Oh no, you're right," that is insensitive to whatever, you pick your poison of whatever that offensive thing is, I'm going to cut that joke, right? So now you just go with the rest of your set, right? And maybe you're starting to write new jokes to plug a hole in. And the next night, oh, that other joke. Oh, my cousin's got that. Like, you can't do. Okay, I won't do. Now you can't do anything. It's sorry, I was making a comedy point in a different. Subset, but that's what I'm saying. But it does go down to these other things. If you can't talk, it's getting to that point where the people on the ends have such a loud voice that everyone's so scared to say anything that you just cower, you know?
Yeah, but I think that like yes, comedy like is a totally different thing. But I also think that like we could all benefit from walking through life with a lot more kindness.
For sure.
And I think that like comedy is a whole different
ball game,
game, 100%. But I do think that like people could absolutely be more sensitive to some things, for sure. And like I get what you're saying with like offense is different, but like it just comes back to like, remember when we were in Lister and we got all the training
100%
on like just being inclusive. For sure. And I just remember feeling like when I went to Lister or just university in general, I felt so much more free. And whether that was from like moving from a small town where everybody had this set expectation of you, and then like you don't have that, so you get to be whoever you want to be. But I just really resonated with being inclusive and just thinking about the fact that your words can have actions. And so obviously like not everybody says the right thing all the time, and that doesn't make them a bad person necessarily. But I think that like I still do my best because
and that changed me a lot too, because we were on the polar opposite side of that too. Growing up in Slave Lake, Alberta, not the most inclusive place, if we're going to be completely honest, right? It's a small town. It's northern, right? It's an oil field community, right? It's very much
very hard.
Very hard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what. And this is the whole thing. I want to talk about two things today. Was that transition of Lister and and women's health. That was the two things. So you walked me right into my next one. So I found it amazing. I got to watch you grow up in that hard place, and you weren't a hard person. Not in any offensive way, but you know that guy came out. Yeah. You're softer than baby shit. But anyway, So I got to watch that, and I saw what that did to you, because behind closed doors, I got to see who you were, and you were expressive and a deep thinker and caring. Right? You go back to caring. You had that caring, right? And then, but because you couldn't express all that, you were a little more, I guess I could say shy.
And it's funny because like I felt like I was shy. I was shy when I was little.
And you were locked into that.
And then like everybody just assumed I was shy, and that's how they treated me. And then like it wasn't really easy to act in any other way, because that was all that I was given the opportunity to be.
And then I got to watch. And then for myself, I was 2 years younger, so I was in grade 10 when you went off to university. So I guess just to tell everybody, Lister is the residence at the University of Alberta. It is a culmination of 4 towers. They all have their own. History, their own culture. Yeah, it's amazing.
Or they did.
They did. They used to, and that's exactly where I wanted to go. You're leading me down the right path. So I got to watch. So I didn't know any of this. I didn't know Lister from a hole in the wall. I was in grade 10. I was still, rocking my high school life, and I was going through the same thing. This is what I said. So you got pigeonholed into being shy. I went the other way. I was never really shy, and I wasn't a hard person either, but I was good at pretending to be. So I could jump into that, pretend I was a big sports guy. I loved hockey, like not a jock, but if you had to pick one of those, that's kind of, but I also read Twilight, and I also, and I also read Harry Potter. But I remember this like the day. I can remember the dressing room we were in when it first went around that I read Harry Potter. I can't remember what age this was, and I got ridiculed like nothing else. And I learned quickly, because I'm a chameleon, and just the way my brain works. Oh, that didn't work. Like I almost think I have a bit of I don't know, a touch of something, but my brain works really weird. Oh, that didn't work. That's not cool. I know
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop doing that, but I'm never going to mention that. I never talk about until, right? So I was kind of pigeonholed that way, where I was had this one facade, but I'm a weirdo, I'm a wacko, right? And I found that anyways, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but that was what I got to. So I got to watch you come back from Lister, and at that, and here's the thing: at that time, I didn't know any of that. I was totally lying to myself. I just thought I was that person, right? It's taken a lot of growth for me to look back and see that I was closing off to all those things, right? Where I'm sure you look back and could, when you have more intelligence, right? Like I have this big thing where I'm 26 now, and I look back at 24-year-old me, and I'm like, oh my God, what an, and then at 24, I would look back at my 22, oh my God, what an idiot. Like, how did people even be around me, right? And I have this stuff, but it's so funny to, and you do that all the time, right? And I'm always getting, but then when you can look back and reassess and you learn these things, oh, like that poor little boy, like you were just doing what you thought you were, like you can look back with compassion on just like, you're in that dressing room, you're getting ridiculed by your whole team. Oh, that's quick change. I know I will never bring this up again, right? And you learn that, right? And I learned that with playing Legends out, because I'm a nerd at heart. Oh, baby, you know me. I'm a huge nerd, right? But I had kept that hidden. And when I got to go to Lister, that's what I got to. I was just to come out, oh, it's cool to read Harry Potter. You guys read Harry Potter too, and you're playing video games.
We're going to have a Harry Potter party.
Oh, let's go. And I had that. But the funniest thing was, so I got to, I don't know what the first kind of time, it was probably the summer after, because I got to go and see you, but I didn't get to see it was the first time I went and visited you in Lister, and I got to see you, how you interacted with people, and you walked different, you had a pep in your step. It was incredible. Like I almost get emotional just thinking about it. It was crazy to see, right? And just to see what you got to blossom into. But I always knew it was there, right? Because I got to grow up with you. I got to see that behind closed door, but to get to see you. But then, so you did that, and then you went for a second year. You went back to Lister, right? And you did your second year in Lister. You loved it. It was amazing, just the culture. We'll have to do a whole other podcast on Lister itself. That was the two that I wanted to see how far we get in this with all the women's health stuff, but I wanted to get to that. So then what did you say to me when I was in grade 12 about to go into Lister? Or no, what did I say to you when you were so excited for me to go in and experience this, and because you had such an amazing outcome, and
and you were like, don't be upset if I don't like it as much as you did.
And it's so funny for me to look back now, because as that little kid, I was thinking, I was thinking, oh, it was good for you because you were so shy and stuff. But I'm already I know who I am, and I'm not going to change at all when I go there, because I didn't know I was lying to myself about all this and hiding all those. I just thought, I'm the hockey guy, I'm the jock kind of guy. That is me, right? And it's so funny. It's hilarious to look back on that now, right? And I said that to you, and then a week in, I am the most diehard. I'm into Lister. I am going to all the events, and I'm doing this, and it changed me to like nothing else could, right? Like it's this thing.
Well, think about who your friends were when like who you became friends with.
Right. Exactly.
Because all of a sudden it's these people who, like, there's just so many people that like you're going to meet people who your interests actually aligned. It's not that you are friends by like, and I'm still so close with my friends who I grew up with, but like all of a sudden you're meeting all these people who have interests that really line up. It's not just because you're in the same grade.
Exactly. And that was the thing. And even my friend group changed a lot with that transition, because I used to be friends with more of the people that would do more of the nerdy things, right? Like I don't want to throw names out there because I feel like it'd be offensive, but my playing Legend and Zelda friends and stuff, but we kind of fell apart too, but we never grew together. But I found now that I was reconnecting with people like them, that, and just it was such a transformative experience to get that. And that was the thing. And I was so open to that. And I found that whole, like you say, the inclusivity part of Lister. So Lister, one of the big corners is you don't say any of, the R words, anything that can be, and they pushed it pretty far just to kind of, like, it's one of those things where I see it as a pendulum, right? If you swing out and go really far on that side, then when it settles back to the middle, you get a good ground. And I think that's what happened with me. But when I first came back, I was the PC police. If I heard anyone say, I was that person that's on Twitter now jumping on people. And it brought me into that, right? And then I realized myself, oh, this isn't me either. Now I'm doing the same thing. I'm pretending to be this person. That's not who I am. And I just had to, it's part of becoming who you are. And that's just standard, right? Everybody goes through a journey of finding themselves. And that's why it's like, oh no, I don't need to pretend to be this person, pretend to be this person. I love who I am, right? When I think I love my weird brain, and just starting to now, and I'm starting to admit, and that's really what I started this podcast for, is because I always am just showing one part of myself to the world. And that's what I'm feeling right now. I'm at work and I have to be very buttoned down, and it's business because I'm the boss and I have to do this, and I can't show my weird side, and I just feel trapped, and like I'm not doing any, like intellectual or creatively, I just feel stunted there, and I feel terrible about it, because I'm in I'm so thankful for the position I'm in, the job I have. It's incredible. And I do love it, but it's not creatively. And that's why I'm starting this podcast, really, is to find that outlet so that I can, be well-rounded and have these intellectual conversations that, that's what fills my cup. That's what, when I'm stuck up in Grand Prairie and busy, work is busy and I'm just dealing with work stuff for 4 weeks in a row, I don't even get back to Edmonton to see my friend or, connect with those people that I had that side. I've lost all touch with, and I find that I just get really down, and it's noticeable when I come down and I get to see my friends and reconnect, you get back into that silly side that you forgot about. And that's why I want to build this, because this will allow me, I can still be the
person you need to be at
person
work.
I need to be at work, right? I never had trouble with that. I'm very good at jumping in. I'm a good chameleon. I can interact with anybody on any level, right, with that stuff. And that's, I think, what makes me successful in the things that I try to do. And that's why I think I will be good at this, right? I hate being cocky about it, because it feels so cocky to think that just a podcast in general, it has to be a little cocky because you're assuming that people want to listen to you, right? And just the thing itself has that inherently, right? But you have to get past that of just, what, I think that doing that work and becoming who I am, and showing people, and I can hopefully get people to that realization themselves earlier, right? Like we both got to that realization more so, and we're also, like I say, every time you look back 2 years, you thought you had it figured out, but you really didn't, right? And you have to try and keep that mindset of, I'm just doing the best I can with what I have. But it's
we could give ourselves that grace, then give everybody else the grace as well.
Yeah, that's
just realize you're doing the best you can with what you have right now, and we don't know everything that's going on behind closed doors.
You know what that word for that is? Enlightenment. That's what all. No, I know it sounds silly, but, and again, going back into, I guess I'll delve into my next one. I listen to podcasts all the time. That's all I do for the last 2 years. This will probably be the intro. I'll probably do an intro to this where I talk about kind of my little journey of what I want to get into it, and a lot of them are spiritual podcasts, and that was never something that I admitted to anybody really about, probably nobody actually, now that I think about it. Maybe just earlier up in the kitchen, I said, talking about listening to spiritual podcasts like Pete Holmes and stuff, but it's something that connects with me quite a bit. I don't know where I was going with that. Lost it. Anywho, but so this is kind of to show all those things. Enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
And that's what it is, right? They always talk about that's all these different religions and gurus have a different path to getting there, but if you really condense and dense it down, right, what was Jesus preaching, right? He was forgiveness, turn the other cheek, all these things, caring, giving, seeing yourself as God is everywhere. Everyone's God. I am God. You are God. God is all around us, right? Like that, just even if whether you believe in it or not, that's the basis of what you're trying to do and become enlightened, right? It's one thing, like you said, to give yourself that grace to look back. Oh, he was just doing the best he can. He's still just doing the best he can, right? And lately, since I've started listening, I've tried to do that, right? When I get mad at people at work, if someone does something really rude to me or just slight, try and take that second. It's not easy. And another thing that's really helped lately, just the last month and a half, I think I've been meditating, doing transcendental meditation and learning to empty your mind and to not react to thoughts. That gives you that split second of space. I find there are two different skills of being able to have that grace and that understanding. That's one thing. And having the space, creating that time of emptiness for you to react that way, because anger grabs you so quickly, right? Something happens, someone slights you anger so quickly, right? Because you're always thinking thoughts, your brain never shuts down, right? But the art of meditating helps you empty your mind and you can react to things. It gives you that split second of, oh, I'm about to get mad. Wait, he's doing the best he can. He's probably had a bad day. You know what? And I think I'm annoying Alyssa with it, right? At home, when we're driving or something, that asshole cut me off. You know what? He's probably in a rush, and I like who I'm becoming with it, right? Yeah. And that's what it's all about. I don't care if it sounds weird or if it annoys other people, because I like what it's becoming with myself, right? And I just love seeing that. But you stumbled right upon it. I don't know if you already knew that before, but that's what all these things and all these people talk about, that enlightenment, is to not only do that with yourself, but to give everyone that space and to really believe it, right? It's one thing to say, I hate using the term God is within us all. We're all one person, right? Or if you don't want to use God, you can just say we're connected.
Love and kindness.
Right, love and kindness. Yeah, you can say it's different brushes painting the same picture, right? It's all that. They're all going for that. It's a feeling. It's what that is, right? And I just think that's amazing. And that's what how do we get onto that, Lister? Oh, just the path. So I got to watch you take that path with Lister and what it did for you, and then I got to go do the same thing, right? And just be amazed by this. And I'm sure I'm gonna have people on the podcast, in the future that also went through that Lister, and I think that's going to be really cool to watch and ask people, right? Because I think we have lots of friends that went to Lister, and that's the other thing. We're going through that, and everyone's so self-centered and going through not even self-centered. It's just you're just doing the best you can, and you're just trying to figure things out.
Well, and
as
it
you
is
go,
a
right?
transition. Like you go from high school where
For sure.
things, at least in our high school, we're very like we're lucky that we like school and we like to read, and so like it wasn't very difficult for us. And then you get to university, and it's a whole different ball game. And so for you, your undergrad experience was different. But for me, knowing that I wanted to go into a master's and I needed to have the highest grades I possibly could to get in, like all of a sudden school wasn't a cakewalk. I had to really work to get these high grades.
Yeah, and you're going through that, and all these other people going through that. But what
and
I'm
you're learning to live alone and
exactly
and be your individual.
And you're learning to connect with people and all that. And I think there's some of those things that just what it brings. So kind of the reason I wanted to have that discussion and show the positive impact that it has is I'm just so saddened with the way it's gone. And you know, that just that I guess for people who don't know Lister or Edmonton or Canada, even, who knows, maybe a couple of years down the road, people are actually listening to this, you know, they've been making changes. It was a vastly different experience from when Courtney went to when I went.
Yeah.
I think we can say that pretty quickly. And it's
and you got to see, like,
and I got to visit and I got to see what it was, right? And it was still amazing for me, but you lose a little bit at a time.
I think that you helped keep the spirit alive because you knew what it was.
I did, and that was all I was doing. I was trying to, you know, I was fighting, you know, I was going to, I went to the dean of students to fight for us to get those, right? And that's the stupid thing, right? Because they're going so hard on that pendulum I talked to earlier about the progressive culture and the being inclusive, that it's starting to wreck everything because they have to be so inclusive that they can't, you can't function, right? Remember what I was talking about with comedy? That's why I wanted to bring up the comedy point, because that is true for comedy, but it has waves throughout the whole world. Like, I think comedy is a microcosm of a bigger issue that we have with it, right? And we want to be inclusive, right? But inclusivity, when done right, is a feeling. It's not a rule, right?
That's true. That's very true.
100%. It is. You know,
and it's funny.
So just let me go on this, because I'm about to school your ass with this. Okay. No. So. Oh shit! I lost it now. I was too cocky.
Sorry.
No. What was I gonna say? So, so it's a feeling, right? So when I first went, my experience when we grew up in Slave Lake, right? Hard, very uninclusive, right? And that it was cool to make those jokes and all that, right? And I was on the wrong side of it, right? And I look back, but again, doing the best I could at that time. Then I went to university, and I went swing all the way to the other side. I was that person. If I heard someone on the street say like the R word in a joke, I would go and berate, you know. And I thought, this isn't me, and this isn't that. You know, it just didn't feel right. Like, okay, clearly what I was like before and making jokes, that wasn't okay. And I agree that this inclusiveness is an important piece, and I connect with it because I did, and I could dial it back to the point where now I'm not the person jumping down people's throats, but I give, that's like the birth of what I'm talking about, giving people that space and understanding, right? That's all in inclusivity and understanding, right? It's being able to, it's being able to feel what inclusivity is trying to do is trying to make everyone actually have that space in their heart to feel the compassion for these people that are in unfortunate circumstances, right? And how they're trying to do that is through words and trying to control what you're saying. But the words that people are saying are not what they feel, right? If someone says the word retard in a sentence, like I just did, just to talk about the word, I'm not, there's no ill intent. There's no, there's nothing bad about it, really, in essence. But like you say, just normalizing that word, it can be hurtful in the other ways, right? And you have to have that. But we need to divorce the intent from the words that we speak, right? We're so bogged down on words lately and what you can say and what you can't say. It's about feelings and actions, right? And that's what it needs to be about. I lost my whole train of thought. I had a really good point to all that, right? No, it's all good. I shouldn't have been so cocky trying to make jokes about it. Right?
It's so hard though, because I love what you say, that inclusivity is not a rule, it's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
Because as soon as you say that though, like I feel like I want to reject that. I totally get that. Right. But like when you say like that we're getting a little bit bogged down in words, and I do agree.
Right.
And I do think that like there should be a little bit of flexibility on some things. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's like if you can just make a little tweak to your
100%.
to your habits,
Yeah.
that means that people don't get
Yeah.
hurt, because there are people who will be hurt
Exactly.
by using those words.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't even come into my mind anymore.
Exactly. And same with me. And since Lister, I never ever went back to using those words. And people probably didn't even notice, but I don't use any of those, you know, the R word, the F word, all those kind of, you know, the insensitive ones. I don't use them in my day-to-day conversation at all, right? It's just not part of it. And I don't feel that big loss, right? Because I understand that. But I could have a discussion where we could, you know, the thing that gets me with my, you know, I always refer to my weird mind, is it boggles my mind that we have to refer to it as the R word when we're just discussing this. It's so,
I see what you're saying.
Clear, it's so clear to everyone that we can't even have the discussion, but you have to say the R word, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so ridiculous about it to me, is if now it's going back to my main point of now we can't have a discussion. Now you're silencing, right? Now you're not being able to look at all the inputs because we can't even have a discussion about the words because if you can't use the words, right? Now we're restricting people from inputs. Now they can't make an accurate decision. I can't have that, right? And I think where the rubber really meets the road with this, right? But those are all silly things, right? It doesn't matter. Like, no one's getting hurt over it. I mean, maybe a little hurt feelings, but in the grand scheme of things, especially with everything going on, like COVID and stuff, we got bigger fish to fry, right?
Well,
but
then you look at
the mental health of people, and
the mental health of people, the people who are going through it, like for us, it's easy to just
you're right.
It's easy for us to just like gloss over it and be like, oh, it's one person, but that one person could really be affected by it.
Yeah.
And but I agree with you.
You're right.
I totally agree with you that like
I made a poor point trying to transition to my next one there. Yeah, you're completely right.
So, but I do agree like that we should be able to to have conversations about it, and people are so scared now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it has done it has done some good.
But that's what I'm saying. The pendulum has to swing out to this far to get back to the middle ground, right? I did that in a couple of years, right? Society doesn't move on a couple year time span. That's one person with a super like hyper dose of inclusivity right from an IV bag into my veins, and I went all the way to the other side. That's now brought me back.
And it's funny because like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, right? But a big portion of people are like, as soon as like they have that that discussion where you talk about the harm that it can cause, people are like, whoa, I get it. And then like they want to they get so excited about doing this, and then they want to show everybody, but like it's not done correctly.
Exactly. And that's what hurts the cause. And this is
and then people are like, oh, those people are so annoying.
I know that they're so mad at the social justice warrior because they're so annoying, and they're going like they're getting mad at me for saying it, but I don't, you know, like they feel attacked because they're being things are being attributed to them that they don't feel is true, right? It's the same thing with if you voted for Trump, you're able to right that what? No, I'm not. Like I just wanted financial reform, like, oh, you know, it's all those things. Anything being attributed to someone that they don't feel personally is a massive affront, right? It hurts people deeply, and it's felt deeply, right? And I don't think people understand that. I think there's you can't put words to it, but there's a certain feeling that kind of echoes, and people that I think good leaders can find this feeling, right? Of it's the reading the room, it's the tone of everyone, what actually people are feeling, right? Words are just a proxy for what people are feeling, right? And that's what Elon Musk is talking about with this neural link of trying to put the chip in your brain so that you can talk and just I know that's a whole we're getting late into the podcast here of okay, we'll just stop. Courtney just said she had to pee. That's why I said just tell me I have to pee. We're going to pause and we'll keep going. I'm going to write down my questions because I have about 6 things to talk about. And we're back. So what I was saying, I think we put such an emphasis now on words and how people are saying these things that it's really pulled us away from what's real. I think what it used to be is leaders could really read what people were feeling. They didn't go about what they said. They could see through that, right? Because like I said, it's just a proxy for what people are actually feeling, right? These good leaders that we used to lead or elect used to know that, and they didn't have to show that they were the best at all these different things, but we had to know that they understood us and that they felt us, right? But now we've gotten so far away from this that what we want is just we're so focused on the words that now we've lost leaders that can even talk, right? During this, it's so obvious to me that when listening to Trump and Trudeau speak, when Trudeau talks, it's just a canned speech, no deviation, right? And it's no feeling, no heart, doesn't, you know, all we need right now is for someone to come out and say, it's going to be okay, this is going to be tough, you know, we need.
Well, I feel like then you look at like Dr. Hinshaw, Dr. Henry.
Right? And that's who's doing it, right?
And they're incredible.
But were they elected?
No.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, because they weren't. The election process mirrors what we want, right? That's what we want, right? We want the election process to give us what we want, but we don't realize it, but we're asking for the wrong thing. We are telling people we don't care about, we just want someone that can read the scripts, don't deviate, don't hurt anybody's feelings, don't do nothing, and that's all good in paper. They think, okay, we're checking all these boxes. This is what you want, right? This is what you want, right? And to us, it's like, oh, we got this idiot out here giving these canned speeches. We're like, talk to us. We're desperate for someone to lead, but we asked for this, right? And in the state, what did they ask for? They asked for. There's a great Andrew Schultz clip he put up about, like, we asked for a circus, and this is what we got. He said we want to be entertained every second of every day. That's what we want. That's what everyone wants, and we got it. It's careful what you wish for, right? But and that's what just hurts me, is because that seems so obvious to me. Like it's not about checking these boxes. It's a feeling. It's about a passion. It's about someone that can connect with the people and understand that, right? And confidently espouse these things that can get us behind you and galvanize the country, right? Instead of the WHO realizing that they didn't have enough masks and PPE for the medical field and saying, Dr. Fauci came out and said it doesn't help to wear masks, and he totally did that. This was back early days, but he did that for a reason. It's because they didn't have enough PPE, right? Now, a different thing, what should have happened was, guys, we messed up. We weren't ready, right? Trump could have gone on and said, you know what?
And it's clear now.
Yeah, and it's clear now. But he could have gone on at that time and said, we really fucked up. We weren't ready for this. But
and it wasn't
the
just
hospitals.
them.
The hospitals need this.
Yeah.
Masks are effective. We don't want to confuse that. But if everybody could just find it, as Americans, we need to stick together. This is the best way. Give up your mask. Donate to the hospital. I bet you a good leader, maybe not Trump, because I don't think that's not what they elected him for. He can't do that, and I don't think Trudeau's that guy either, because we're not electing for that anymore. But there could have been that person, right? Like Mayor Giuliani after 9/11, right? The way he stood up and it was a leader and spoke to the people, right? That's all it would have taken. And Canada did too, but for the most part, America, the patriotism in America is off the charts, right? If you put it in the terms that they want to hear and actually connect with the people, like you should be if you're their leader, you can make these things happen and you don't have to muddy the waters. Now they went out and said, oh, masks don't work, you shouldn't be wearing masks, because
and then they don't trust the information that they're
getting.
getting.
And now they don't trust the information that they're getting, and that's what it is with all this stuff. They think these news outlets and all these things think that they're doing, they know better than the public, and they just need to, we'll just tweak it. Trump said this whole speech, but if we just cut this one, we need Trump out of here, so he's bad. We just need to cut this one because that will get them against them. But when you said it hurts your own cause, you see that all the time now. You're hurting your own cause, because all it does is, it's 2020. People can investigate, and it's so easy for just to reply to the Twitter, and you see it and you read it. No, this is actually what he said. Watch this clip, and they add another minute onto the video, and now it's completely different context, right? But they're doing that all the time, just ramping it up, and that's what's scaring me down the States. They're doing it all the time, and you just see it seems like that's ramping up in this fake news, because if you bring up the word fake news, what do they think of? Trump supporter, right? That's what he says about CNN and all that. But I don't like Trump. I mean, you know me very well. He's not my favorite guy, but he's pretty right about this fake news. It's very clear to me. I can show all these, and it's happening I see it like 50 times a week, where they're cutting little things and they're doing his job for him. And that worries me, that he's going to win again, and now they're running a senile, against him. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It hurts, but it's what we asked for. We need a leader that we just need to change where we're going. But I think that all stems back to that we're putting too much emphasis on the words. It's not about the feeling, right? Inclusivity, all these things. It's about the feeling. It's about what people do. It's about actions, right? You have these people like that do these incredible things and are great people for the world, right? But then you go back 20 years and they did this one wrong thing, and we tear them down for that. That's not what we're about. People change. People have they make wrong decisions. They realize the error of their ways, right? Like, if somebody went and held me to the standard of just 3 years ago, I would be appalled at what they just. I'd be on their side with them, like, holy man, look at that guy, right? But like I say, doing the best I could with what I had, right? You're looking on that little boy, really, that 2 years ago, of what he was trying to do with what he was given, right? But we just need that. We need that compassion, and we need to get back to that. We need to start asking for actual leaders. We need to, it's a cultural thing. But so my point I was trying to make earlier is all these things about the PC culture and the inclusivity, right? Where I made a poor point, like you said, if it's not, we have bigger fish to fry. That was not what I meant to say. What I'm saying is that is extremely important, and that is a good fight to have. But where it really rubber meets the road is with science, right? And this is where, like Eric Weinstein, I love to hear, right?
Oh,
you want to inclusivity is great. Let's do it, but not in the lab. He said, take your PC shit and get the fuck out of my lab, right? When he said, and people are saying, that there's no
But
physiological.
nobody listens to science.
That's what I'm saying. But it's because science is becoming convoluted with all this bullshit, right? We have to get back to the science. So now there's people coming out and saying, he was telling this one story on his podcast, saying there was one neurologist came out, pretty left wing, and said there's no physiological difference between the male and female brain, which is just not correct, right? And they. But he was very curious. Well, so why is nobody standing up and saying it? Like, or correcting? Okay, I see what you're trying to say, but actually, this is different. But right, fully understand. Like I said at the very start, I have a huge respect for women, but I think that degrades to if you think you need to lie about physiological workings and biological workings to try and raise women up, they don't need that. They're different in their own way, and they're awesome. They're passionate, and they're strong in their own way. You don't have to lie and pretend they're not. Like, that's just that seems more sexist to me, to pretend and think that women need you to come white knight them and pretend that all these things aren't true, right? Mm-hmm. When it comes to science, it's got to be cold hard facts, right? Whatever hot button topic that comes to, that's what he's saying. Well, it's not my argument. It was to him, but it just resonated with me so much because that is important, right? So. When it comes to science, when it comes to like these really big things, you have to keep that away. And I think that's where we're really degrading and falling away from. I think that's the real thing that scares me, right? Is we have to do all this, and inclusivity is great, and we got to help push that forward in the domains that are going to help the people. But when it can't go into certain spots, there's got to be certain sacred things that it can't touch, right? And that's what worries me, right? And I think where I want to bring that back to is one of those things is like Lister, where I think they're bringing in all these things to try and make it more inclusive, but I think it's under the guise of trying to make it more inclusive. But I think what they're actually trying to do is make more money because they can charge way more to international students. They're trying to fit it towards a very cookie cutter to someone that's going to send their kid 3,000 miles away to this university. You want to make sure they have a cookie cutter, no risk, no fun, no nothing, just get them through, right? That's what they're trying to do because they can make more money that way. But I learned more in Lister than I did in my 4 years of university. You might be a little different because it was very intensive towards one thing, and that's what I'm saying. That's my little beef with universities. And actually Eric Weinstein thinks that it's part of that. It's all interrelated, right? Now, what did we say at the start of all these people, the presidential races between two 80-year-olds and all these university chairs are all, 69, 75, and they're outdated. And these schools of thought are just crumbling, like these institutions that used to be, but now it's just a cash grab. Everybody goes to, everybody loads on the debt and you don't learn nothing. And it's just, it scares me with the way it's going. Right. But, absolutely. And just, I think we need to protect places like Lister because I wouldn't be the person I am if I didn't go through that in the way that it was, right? To make my own mistakes, to drink a little too much one night with the floor, and they take care of you and get you home, right? And then for them to change the rules where they're just trying to, well, you guys can go out and get as drunk as you want, but just don't do it on this property. Go out to the bars at 18. You can legally drink in Alberta at 18. They want people to come in. How old are you when you come into university?
17, 18.
Yeah, exactly. So now all these people are coming, or maybe you come from a province where the drinking age isn't 18. This is the first time you can drink, and they want you to just go out into the bar because now it's off their hands, right? Yeah. They don't have to worry about it if someone what happened. A kid from our hometown, I think last year or the year before, he passed away unfortunately because he went out to a bar, was drinking, tried to walk back by himself, and it's heartbreaking, and it's so sad to hear stories like that because we know more than anything if you would have kept some of the rules and listed the same, where you create that safe space with higher year level students that can watch over and make sure that if you do get too drunk, they get them home safe, and they create that safe environment for you to push those limits.
And it's like a team. It's like a family. Exactly. Like you wouldn't let somebody go home by themselves.
Yeah, that's what you create by that. Is you create this bond, this family that you live with, and you would die for them, right? Like it's like your
and it really does feel like a family.
It does, and that was the most incredible. That's what taught you so much. That's why I learned so much there. It was.
And that's why some of our best friends are like still from Lister.
Yeah, you go through that, you become family people, and that doesn't end when you go right. You go through high school and you have all those friends that you think are super close, and you might still stay close to them, but it's a different level, right? But now you're just tearing that every year. They're tearing that away little bit by little bit and trying to make it more homogenous and just cookie cutter, like I was saying.
It'd be interesting to chat with somebody who's in there now.
100%. That's what I was thinking, right? I wanted to, I got to start right now with COVID. It's hard to get in with people on this podcast, and I also need to get a couple episodes in the bank because it's very hard, I find, without this is our first episode that I've recorded. I don't know if I'll release it first, but this is the first one I've ever done. And thank you for sitting down with me. I'm very glad you did it because I'm just learning. It took me all morning to get this set up. But, those are the kind of people I want to have. I want to have these discussions with them, right? Like I want to have this, but you can't say, they'll go, well, what is your podcast about? Can I listen to it? Right. And if I don't have episodes, so I can't go ask those. So I need to get these in the bank with people, show kind of my position of, I'd love to talk to anybody. I'm very reasonable. I just want it to be, as long as you are, like I said, listening to the inputs and making educated decisions that are doing it and not just putting money first, like they are, or even if they said this, we understand that, what Lister is and all that and what you're saying, but for us to keep going just the way the university's set up, we need to make money. That's our growth structure. That's our hands are tied with that. That's what, at least now. Okay, so you've looked at everything, you've looked at all the options,
and you're not pretending that
you're
it's
not
one way.
Yeah, you're not pretending it's not. You've made a decision that I'd be so fine with that. Okay, you know what? I think that's unfortunate. And I think that you will get more out of keeping Lister the way it was and letting people grow there. Than that, but at least you made a decision about it. Don't just pretend, no, we're just trying to do it for student safety and all. Like, that's bullshit.
And if you think about like how much everybody in Lister banded together and did, like, they worked so hard and they came up with all these arguments and they really worked on defending it. Yeah. And like, it was just like, they weren't listened to. It was completely, it was brushed off. And like, that really makes you, like, that's your first experience with
authority,
trying to work with authority and not having any place in it.
It's so sad. I mean, a perfect example of that, of just them pushing too far with just in effort to be inclusive. Like, so there's a dodgeball league in Lister, and every year there's an all-star where they have it separated into towers. So they take the best players from each tower and they have a tournament. It's an all-star tournament. So one tower, Kelsey Tower, like to do every year, it was just tradition, they would do mohawks, right? Red mohawks. They would, you shave the sides, you get a mohawk. Or just the guys. I think, did any girls ever do it?
Girls would often put a streak.
Oh, right, yeah,
like
a red streak down the middle. But it was completely optional. You didn't have to do it if you didn't want to. It was never forced. But they said it's hazing. You can't do it. And we go, what if we sign documents saying we are fully within our own rights, we want to do this? They said no. If you do it, there'll be consequences, right? We'll hell list you, or we'll kick you out, right? Because they had ultimate power and they could do that. So I went. So just that year that this hit the road, because the year before, your second year of Lister, they were allowed to do it. There was no problem. It was my first year when I got there, and I was.
And that was the year that everything started coming down.
Yeah, and that was when they were changing all these rules, right? Locking everything down, that was the start of it.
And everybody was pushing back.
And everyone was pushing back, right? So I took it upon myself. I was the manager of that team that year, right? I was the kind of the coach, right? And that was my little family unit, and they really wanted to do it. They were really passionate. So I went to the heads of just Lister and I said, you know what? I think I understand where you're kind of safe from, that you're worried this is hazing. And I know there's been some really touchy things in the past with universities and hazing. I understand that fully. I just tried to be an adult and have a conversation with them, right? Like I said, give them all the inputs and make, because if they can look me in the face with a very well-reasoned conversation and still say no, now it's a problem, right? So I did that and they said, no, it's hazing. And they wouldn't listen. And they brushed me off, frankly. And I was not happy about it. So I talked to some other people, found some contacts, and actually got a meeting with the dean of students for the entire university, sat down with him, and explained the situation, said, you know what, it's optional. We'll sign some if you need to. Broke it down with them. And he goes, oh, yeah, no, that makes total sense. Go ahead. Or I'll sign it. Like, you're good. I'll talk to him. And it was like, oh, how are we? Like, it was in such a bubble of inclusivity in that Lister. Well, as soon as you got outside there, I looked at it, oh, yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Like, that's not hazing at all. Like, it's optional. And we got to show, because there was a couple kids that weren't going to do it. I said, and that's what he said. He said, can you show, is anyone not going to do it to show that it's not mandatory to everyone? I said, yeah, there's a couple people that just really like their hair. They don't want to do it, right? Whatever. Not a big deal. And that's why it wasn't a big deal, because we weren't going to force anybody. And if we did, that would be an issue. But it wasn't. And he said, yeah, no problem. Right? But,
and it would have been taking away the experience for the people who've, like, we're so excited to be part of that team and to identify that way.
And that was such a culture, right? And back then, you could return to Lister multiple years. So people that didn't make the all-star team the year before, and it was a big deal. I know it sounds silly, it's dodgeball, but I'll have somebody on where we can really dive deep into the dodgeball culture there. But it was a big deal to these people, and that was something that everyone was so excited for, and they were so upset that they couldn't do it, and there was no good reason given to them why not, right? Because as soon as people said, oh, it's because of hazing, everyone that looked at it rationally said, no, it's not. That, like, I see what you're saying, but no, like, it's not even close to that, right? But yeah, it's just to watch that fight and just to see that we stood up and fought for that one little win. But in the grand scheme of things, there's all these other things being taken away and torn away, and it's not becoming the same place. And I just worry, because imagine if I don't want to put it on you, but just for myself, I can't imagine the person I would have grown to be right now sitting in front of you if I had had that 4 years of Lister in the form that it was, right? Because it really, really changed who I was. And I think I could do a whole podcast just having Listerites on of just talking about that conversation we had about what we were before to what we were after and what it did for us. Ooh, that's a really cool podcast idea. Maybe I got to start 2 podcasts, but maybe that'll be a side one. But
Lister before and after.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Right? Like, I just think it's an incredible transformative place, right? And me and you are just like anybody. If we hear anybody saying, "Oh, I think my kid's gonna go to," they got to go to Lister. We're jumping out to force them there. But I don't want that to change, and for me to be telling people, "Oh, you got to go to Lister," and they're getting there. It's not the same, and it's not what I was trying to do, right? I value my recommendation I give out. If I recommend something to people, I want to be very sure of it. I hate recommending things that aren't good, right? So I just worry where it's going, and just as a overall, I just think there's so many areas where people have their heart in the right place of trying to fix these problems, but the way they're going about them are creating bigger ones. You see what I mean? Like that's my biggest issue, right? It's just, it's the death of nuance. That's what it is. That's what it all comes down to. That's what I wanted to name this podcast, as you know, right? But I just thought that no one would understand that. But it's just, it's everything's so polarized. It's black or white. It's right or left. If you don't toe the line exactly of the left wing liberal stuff that you want to think, you're called a racist. If you don't if you're not completely gun toting, small government then you're a liberal snowflake, right? It's just so ridiculous to me. Like this, the way my mind works, I can't even handle it. Like it annoys me so much that we can be operating in such a clearly phony system that we're just playing these games. Like, it just gets to me. But yeah.
I guess like all we can do now is like have these conversations, and that's like one day, like when well, we've got little ones in our life, and then like if we do have children, how we raise them, we're that force that shows them the right way to do things and to be inclusive on the right way. But you can be inclusive, but you can still be flexible. You can still be open to be who you are, right? You don't have to kowtow yourself just to the small box of what's okay to be. You can still explore, but if we teach you to be inclusive, that's just baked into you. That's part of who you are, right? And you see that with kids, right? Like every generation. But they generally are.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Kids are that way until they're encouraged not to be.
Right. But now you have the next generation that's gonna be raised by us that went through some of that transformative piece and came out back in the middle, right? We got like I said, the full.
I think even like the 10 years ahead of me even.
Oh, for sure. And that's the thing. Everyone's so bad about, but it is changing, right? That's the thing that nobody. It's this weird dynamic lately where if you bring anything positive, everyone wants the negative and wants the bad, and you can't talk with the good, But I think you're right that it gets better every generation. It's just nobody's satisfied with the rate of change, right?
And I do think that we have to, like, we can't just be complacent. We have to actively work for things to get better. Yeah. That's why I felt like I couldn't let that point lie.
For sure. And that was a poor point by myself. That's not what I was going for. But I'm glad you corrected me there.
So I do think like we have to actively continue to work on getting these things better. But you're right. Like you can't jump down somebody's throat when they don't automatically point out the negatives.
Exactly. And you can't. And you have to make sure that it doesn't step out of reality. Right. You have to keep it within reality, right? Like I was saying with the science stuff, you can't, to make your point, you can't bend scientific fact. That's what I'm saying. I think those are the two things. I think you always have to do that, but you also have to make sure you have a steadfast ground, because now these poor scientists that just they don't have any, most of them aren't even, that socially adept to even navigate these kind of subjects, but all they want to say is, no, I just want to do I just want to test this, but now you're saying I have to find this new reality of things that aren't even actually like I can prove this scientifically fact, and you're trying to tell me it's different, right? Like that's where I think we have to stick up for that area and just say, okay, we understand the spirit of what you're trying to say, but when it comes to science, that's not what matches up, right? And that's going to lead us down bad paths if you try and shoehorn what you want to see out of the world, right? You want to see the male and female brain be 100% identical. That's what you would love to see, right? But it's just not how it works. But that's the beauty of life. How boring would it be if everyone was the same and everyone was equal? It would be more. That's not what life is, right? But you can't step outside of reality to that. But I just find that lots of time, and I guess stepping onto reality on the left hand side is that. But then there's the same thing on the right hand side of them stepping onto reality of that. these people are all hippies that are out to, they just want
or even like to like for that exact example, like to be like far left would be to say there's no difference, but to go far right would be like there's a superior gender.
Exactly. Yes, perfect. Thank you. That's what I'm trying. Yeah, there's two polar opposites, but it's so rare for people to actually be on those sides, but they're so goddamn loud, right? But that's where I think and the media and stuff is all put into that because there's no long form conversation. That's why I love podcasts. That's what I fell in love with. Is you get to see these conversations like this, so you can delve past the first couple layers where usually on CNN you're only going to get 5 minutes and you can't get this deep and you can't discuss in the nuance of it, right?
Right.
And it's
you have to get your top points out.
But what's stopping CNN from instead of doing a 5-minute thing, instead of
it's
doing
people's attention span and their time.
They think that, but now why is Joe Rogan the biggest show in the world?
That's true.
By like a factor of whatever it is. It's like not even close, and it's long form and stuff.
I'd much rather listen to that.
But it doesn't fit their narrative. If you go deeper than the first couple levels, now everything they're saying falls apart, right? And they have to have a nuanced conversation. That's why I'm saying it's the death of nuance. It's fighting, but they're crumbling. That's what I think is this format is growing and is gaining power, and they're scared and they're crumbling, right? That's why news networks were crumbling till Trump came along, right? And now they got this big resurgence when he won or when he started running, right? And they started doing all these things where they like clickbaity titles and, like I said, clipping all those clips. That got their traffic, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's holding them on to, right? Now they don't want to, they hate Trump so bad, but they know that that's kind of the thing keeping them going until COVID-19. Now, what's the only reason people are watching? That's the only reason that news are actually profitable right now is because everyone's terrified. But why are people terrified? Because they haven't put a positive thing on the news. Because that's bad for business. If you put out the positive things, people are a little less scared. Okay, things are gonna be okay. I don't have to leave CNN on all the time, and watch our Fox News and watch it all the time because things aren't scary. It's in their best interest. That's what I think that gets me. It seems so obvious to me that it's in their best interest to scare people.
But there used to be an expectation that like media was held to tell the truth.
Yeah, but that's died. It died years and years ago.
But if people aren't being critical of what they're intaking, like they just continue to believe that like they're getting the correct information
exactly
from the source.
And that's what's so damaging, right? But this misinformation, this is just such a nice microscope to put on it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you wish it would be something else. Wouldn't be a pandemic that would put the microscope on it. But you see this like that Dr. Fauci saying that masks aren't safe because they just didn't have enough and they need it for the medical field. So instead of saying that, they tried to lie to the public because they knew.
Yeah, that was a dumb move.
Oh, just so dumb. But that is the epitome of what they're trying to do, right? It's that sums up all the clickbait stuff of just we know better. Trump's bad. We need to get him out. So let's just. I know we could put the whole clip out where it still is pretty bad, but it's not as bad if we cut all that stuff and just put that one sentence. That's what they're doing. That's how they get their stuff right, and it's bleeding into the world, right? That's what scares me because I can turn the news off, and then now it's just unfortunate that all those other people are listening to it. But once it starts to bleed in and starts to affect people, like now. Like you can't spread disinformation like that, and now you can't trust them. Right now, everyone for the first couple of weeks of that Dr. Fauci, everyone looking up to. But as soon as you do something like that, now all your cachet, all your what's the word?
Like your trust?
Yeah, all your trust is gone. All your reputation is tarnished, right? Like now nobody wants to believe a thing he says. And when people try and now they're armed with ammo on the other side to say, oh, well, that's the left's guy, this Dr. Fauci. Well, listen to what he said there. It's like, oh man, like why would you just be honest with us and we'll play the game, right? If you're so confident in your side and you're on the right, you shouldn't have to lie to people. You just be honest and play the facts, right? Have a long form conversation. That's why they don't do it, because they know deep down that that's not what they're about, right?
And if you just told the truth and you're like, this is where we messed up and this is how we're going to not do that in the future. Like I would be 100% a lot more trustful.
Sure.
Like it's opened up so many, like so many eyes on what things that we were really set up to fail in any pandemic. Yeah. Like just with where our supply chain is and the way that we've set up our medical supplies.
No, for sure. And we're almost at 3 hours. So just to wrap it up on a little more positive note, but that's what, but I think, I know it's all doom and gloom what we're talking about, but I think the tide is turning. I think just seeing that long form podcast like that are becoming the norm and becoming people, more and more people are going to them instead of the news. I think people are starting to flip the script of, oh, we don't have to listen to these guys. They're lying to us all the time, both sides, right? Left and right. Fox News and CNN, they're both lying to us. Why are we listening to these guys? Because they're all, at the end of the day, it's all the same people pulling the strings, right? They just want to keep everyone fighting and keep people divided, right?
And it only benefits them.
It only benefits them, right? The more clicks they get, you get 1,000 clicks on your clickbaity shit, and then you.
I get so annoyed when I click on something and I'm like,
me too. I get angry. Like Forbes. Forbes used to be the best. You know, Forbes used to be like accurate business information. I used to love Forbes, and now it's just click I almost guarantee every time on Facebook if a Forbes thing comes up, it's not what it's saying. Like whatever that title is completely wrong. I haven't clicked one in like 3 years that's actually been what the title said. Like, but Forbes, that used to be an institution. Like, what happened? But I think that is them just, instead of them saying, okay, we were wrong, you know, admitting it and going to that, it's them trying to double down, keep on it, right? Same with the universities and stuff. They're going, oh, we've over-indexed into staff and clerical stuff, like that we have this crazy overhead that we need to charge people all this money for stuff that we really could do online, right? I think this pandemic's going to change a lot of that.
Oh, it's going to change a lot of things.
It's going to open some eyes to, oh, well, why do we need to pay $60 million in salary to all these staff and these board members and these chancellors and what? Like, what are we doing? You know, like, we don't even need brick and mortar. We can do this online. I mean, I don't want to say that because I do think there's lots to in school learning, but I think there's a revolution coming right on that too. And I think that's what's so it gives me hope to think that people are turning to long form, more nuanced publications, that they can get that information and that it's making a resurgence, right? Because you think about, when's the last time you sat for 2 hours and 53 minutes with someone and had just straight conversation with your phone down?
Well, I like to do that when I'm like out with my friends. Like, I do my best not to be on it.
But what I want, it's gone by the wayside. But it's so important, and I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it until I started getting and listening to podcasts, and I'd be so jealous of like these great guests that have on the conversation that had like, oh, I wish I could do that. And then a couple weeks ago, I was, well, why can't I do that? You know, like, the equipment's online. I can watch. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can figure this out, right? It's been a little more difficult than I thought it'd be so far. I thought it'd be a little more plug and play, but I mean, now I've got this first one in. I mean, hopefully it's all recording, right? And this actually makes the light of day at some point. But you know, like, you can be that voice of change in the world, right? And that's a big thing that I saw was there's not a lot of voices from Alberta, and you see these people that from our hometown, that the feeling they're trying to convey when they're putting those posts up about you know, doing the same thing, calling them left snowflakes and this is our country, you kind of take my guns. That's not what they mean. What they're saying is, I feel unheard. Alberta puts so much money into the Canadian economy, and we have no say, right? The way the political system's set up, that we are just the ugly stepchild, shut up, we have no say, and they're so frustrated with it. But the only way they know how to, they've been trained, and the media's trained these people, that's, if you're unhappy, you this is your route, is to put these completely ridiculous, the other side is so the devil. You just have to have a nuanced conversation, right? What I want to do is become, or try to be, that voice of reason that can take what they're trying to say, right? Because I understand and I feel for those people in the oil field that are losing their jobs and that they want, and they get pointed, they say, oh, well, we don't want to, this Trudeau's an idiot, right? Or they'll put some Trudeau post and go, oh, you're a racist. And they go, what? No, I just want to be heard and want but they get painted with this brush, right? And that's what I feel. But I just want to be able to take what they're trying to say and be able to bring it to the world, right? And I think that's what, if anything else, I mean, I'm not trying to make money with this or nothing. It's mainly for my mental health, so I can have some really intellectual conversations, because that's what's good for me and that's what I need. Yep. And then also to try and be that voice of the people, because I haven't, and maybe I'm just not privy to it, and there is that voice talking for those people in Alberta, right? And those kind of people, but I haven't heard it yet, right? So I don't know. If anybody, you know, someone's got to do it. Why can't it be me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so
that's I thought it was fun.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome, and
went a lot faster than I thought.
Yeah, I know people. I don't know. Maybe we'll cut this out, or it'll be a nice peek behind the curtain. But that was, man, I was super nervous for the first 2 minutes, and then it was good. Oh man,
I was calling
sweating.
Heavy Man.
Yeah. But see, then that's what you just got to get used to, and that's what I'm so excited about. Is I hate saying it, like I said at the start, like just a podcast in general is cocky by just
nature.
By nature, right? You have to have a little bit of that. But I keep going back and forth between that of like, oh, what am I thinking? Like, who wants to listen to me? And being like, no, I'm interested. I have a worldview and I want people to hear it, right? And I keep going back. But what excites me so much is this went pretty well. and this is the first time I've ever done it, and every podcast I ever listened to, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, they all say, I wish I just started earlier because the first 50, I sucked. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to talk on a microphone. I didn't do all this. So I'm just, you know what? I just decided I ordered the equipment because I knew I was going to chicken out. So I just made the financial investment of buying all the mics and stuff. And now I'm in it, right? And I'm so glad I did now that I've done one. But that's why I was so pressured up. I think you could see how frustrated I was today. I was trying to get this on a timeline. I was getting, because I just wanted to get the first one out of there. I was just so scared. I was so scared of it. And I was holding that anxiety until I could get my first one out and realize I can do this. I can sit for 3 hours and have a conversation we just did. Yeah. And I feel so, and thank you for doing that. But I just feel so much relief that, that was the first one. It won't get any worse than that. Like I can, that was, and I thought it went pretty well. So thank you so much for being my first guest and being a great sister and taking care of me, my little shithead that I was all those years. When I look back at them, you took the brunt of a lot of that. So I appreciate that. And yeah, let's go have some delicious dinner. All right. High five.
Nice.
Socially
high five.
distance, air high five. All right. See you, kiddos. All right, kiddos. Just like that, that's episode 1 in the books. So thank you guys all for taking that ride. Again, I apologize about that buzzing noise. I guarantee you it won't happen again because I learned my lesson. And if you want to reach out with any podcast ideas, any podcast guest ideas, any intro music so I don't have to sing, any artwork for the cover page for iTunes, that would be appreciated. It can all be sent to VonDubCast@gmail.com, VonDubCast@gmail.com, and I'll check that from time to time just to see if anybody wants to reach out and give me anything that can help me get better at this, because that's all I want to do. I want to continue with this and get better and better each time and really bring you guys something that you might enjoy, because I had a hell of a fun time recording it and I can't wait to do my next one. So thank you guys all so much and have a great time. A great time. Great night. Great day. Have a great life. Oh, you guys get it.